have your trust, one follower at a time.
Good morning. This is the latest AI travel news from GBNews.com. The A9 is closed both ways at Blair Athol after flooding. On the A4232 northbound, from the A48 interchange to the M4 junction 33 at Capel Llynilturn, expect heavy congestion. On the M66 southbound between the A56 and junction 1, a crash has shut one lane. In Derbyshire, the A38 northbound between the A61 at Alfreton and the M1 has lane closures after a collision with long delays. Also on the trains, Gatwick Express has major disruption at Redhill, and Southern is delayed between Chichester and Havant, plus Redhill. For more travel news, go to gbnews.com.
Martin Daubney, weekdays from 3 p.m.
I think that many problems that Luton has, I think many parts of the country are suffering from those problems. Okay. But I think there are some good aspects to living in Luton as well.
But Raki, we have to address the elephant in the room in a sense, and that is Luton an example of a failed multicultural town? What I mean by that is we have 54.8% of the population is non-white, the largest being minority ethnic group Asian, and we do see, you live there, cultures living side by side, and there's a lack of integration. Is that a problem?
No, I think there's definitely integration challenges which need to be addressed in Luton. Now, when I was a lot younger, there were significant social tensions in Luton. We saw the Islamist Butchers of Basra demonstrations and then the subsequent creation of the English Defence League, the EDL. But I have to say, even though we have those integration challenges, if you look in other parts of the country, there have been significant forms of civil unrest which Luton has not experienced. If you remember the 2011 summer riots that took place across England, there weren't many incidents in Luton. And if you want to talk about ethnic and religious segregation, I think that Leicester has far bigger problems than Luton. So I think that while Luton has its issues surrounding integration and segregation, I think that some of those problems are even more intense in other parts of the country.
We can't finish this conversation without noting, of course, the entrance to the away end at Luton Town Stadium there. Of course, that is an entrance which goes through someone's house. It's so bad, it's good. In fact, away fans who go there say it's a good away day. It's something that they will always remember.
GB News, the People's Channel.
Good morning, 9:30 on Monday, the 12th of January, live across the UK. Britain's Newsroom with Andrew Pearce and Miriam Cates.
Iran has warned the US that they will retaliate against any attack after more than 500 people are now reported dead as protests in Iran spiral. This is including a 23-year-old student protester who was shot in the back of the head and buried by the roadside.
Meanwhile, in the US, multiple people have been injured as a lorry has plowed into a crowd at an anti-Iran protest in Los Angeles.
We need the government to wake up and realise what effect they're having on our livelihoods before it's too late. We can't carry on for much longer as we are.
Well, after months of mounting pressure, British farmers are taking direct action against a broken supply chain threatening the future of British food production.
Well, the Met Police are boasting of the lowest homicide rate in their area in 11 years, but still 97 people were killed. That's as it's revealed that 2 sex offenders and 300 with criminal records are still being employed by the Metropolitan Police.
The most vigorous, most serious you could possibly be on these issues. That data is a moment in time.
Elsewhere, Britain's most senior former military chiefs are sounding the alarm, making a final appeal to stop the handover of the Chagos Islands as MPs prepare for a crunch vote in Parliament today.
Miriam, I think it's significant that the farmers now, the supermarkets are caught up in this protest. This is the first time the food chain is directly impacted. In the past, they've come to Westminster, they've gone to city centres, they've disrupted traffic. It's been very peaceful, but they've pointedly not done anything that could impact on getting your grub on the table.
Absolutely.
And this is a sign, I think, that they're not getting through. The government has U-turned on the inheritance tax, raising the threshold, but not enough.
Not enough. And as you said, the supermarkets are a big part of this problem. They pay such low prices because they're so powerful. They're the only major market for the farmers. They can drive down prices. And it's incredible how little farmers now make on a pint of milk or any of their other produce. And it's a wonder that many of them can carry on. In fact, many of them can't. Lots of farmers are selling up, and that is a threat to British food supply. So we're going to be talking to some farmers later.
We want to buy British food. We don't want to be buying imported food, surely. As ever, we want to know what you think. Send your views, post your comments. Maybe you work on a farm or you're a farmer. You visit
gbnews.com/your say. But first, here's your 60-second news update with Sam Francis.
Very good morning to you from the newsroom. Well, the top story this hour, the death toll in Iran is surging as the regime cracks down on protests now aimed directly at the supreme leader. At least 544 people have been killed and more than 10,000 arrested. Donald Trump says Tehran wants to negotiate but hasn't ruled out military action.
We're watching it very closely. If they start killing people like they have in the past, I think they're going to get hit very hard by the United States.
Here, the government's backing the protesters and MPs are now pushing to ban Iran's Revolutionary Guard. In other news this morning, tens of thousands of homes across Sussex and Kent still have no running water after Storm Goretti and a power failure forced a major incident. Schools, libraries and parts of a hospital have shut. New parental leave laws are coming into force from April, giving parents day one rights to unpaid leave and boosting access to paternity pay for thousands more fathers. Sir Keir Starmer says it brings basic rights and security. The Conservatives warn it could cost jobs. As we heard earlier, London's murder rate is now at its lowest in more than a decade, with 97 homicides last year, fewer than New York, Berlin or Milan. Met boss Mark Rowley says targeted policing is shattering fewer families, though critics say Londoners still don't feel safer. And Timothée Chalamet beat Leonardo DiCaprio and George Clooney to win Best Actor at the Golden Globes, but DiCaprio's one battle after another did manage to clean up with 4 awards. Jessie Buckley took Best Actress for Hamnet as the Oscars race heats up. Those are the latest headlines for now. I'll be back with you at 10.
Tune in to GB News Radio wherever you are. Online, on DAB digital radio, on TuneIn, on Radio Player, on Nation Player and on your smart speaker. Just say, play GB News.
Hello, good morning and welcome. You're watching and listening to Britain's Newsroom. We're live across the United Kingdom on GB News with Andrew Pearce and Miriam Cates. Now, Andrew, it's really interesting to see these farmers' protests spread now to supermarket distribution centres, and we are going to be talking to farmers later. We've got Jack Carson live from Peterborough at the start of those protests.
I think their patience is just being eroded because they've been very well-spirited, generous protests. They've not impacted people at home, but they clearly think their message is still not getting through, so they're ratcheting it up.
I think people will be very supportive. I think people would be willing to pay more for basics like milk if they knew that it was going to the future of farming. But we will be covering that in a lot of detail later on.
You know, I was looking at a figure, though, Miriam, that because the supermarkets dominate everything now, most farms now earn 34 pence in the pound of what goes to supermarkets.
Gosh.
That is down 28% since the 1980s.
So if you spend £1 on milk in the supermarket, just 34p is going to the farmers.
Yeah.
That's extraordinary, isn't it?
And they
no wonder they're finding it hard.
They do all the hard work. They get up really early. They have to employ the staff, all the equipment.
Yeah.
And this wretched government wants to whack them with inheritance tax too.
Absolutely. Well, we will be covering that later. We'll be speaking to farmers and going over to Peterborough. But, of course, the top story internationally today is that 500 people are dead after protests in Iran over the weekend escalated. Tehran is warning Washington that it will retaliate against any attacks.
We're watching it very closely. If they start killing people like they have in the past, I think they're going to get hit very hard by the United States.
Well, that was the President speaking on Air Force One. The US joins calls for Downing Street to prescribe Iran's Islamic Revolutionary Guard Corps. Now, that is an organisation that effectively enforces the will of those mad mullahs who run Iran all around the world. And I've been writing in the Mail today about the Crown Prince of Iran, who told me they've been involved in at least 22 attempts to assassinate people on British soil.
Gosh.
Since 2022.
Yeah, astonishing.
And Starmer said he prescribed them. In other words, make them a terrorist organisation. And guess what, Miriam? He hasn't.
Well, I think the government say that it would destroy diplomatic relations with Tehran. Well, it may not take much longer for that to happen. And the former Attorney General, Sir Michael Ellis, joins us now. Sir Michael, good morning. Thank you for joining Britain's Newsroom. Extraordinary scenes from Iran. Do you think this could be the end of the Ayatollah's regime?
It could be the end. There have previously been uprisings by student bodies and the general populace. So one would hope that this will be the beginning of the end for this evil regime. It's not inevitable, though. This is why I think that, as Andrew was saying, Reza Pahlavi, the Crown Prince of Iran, the son of the late Shah, who was overthrown by this regime in 1979, is still encouraging protesters, because it isn't inevitable, and without American help, they are obviously struggling. Hundreds of people have been killed. The figure may actually be far higher than the number that we know. It could well be over 1,000 deaths of students in that area, and people of all ages. In fact, we've seen some footage of older people also protesting. This is a hated regime. It's an evil promulgation of terror around the world for nearly half a century now. Hezbollah has been supported. A US State Department report in 1 year alone said that Iran had funded Hezbollah with $700 million. But they've also funded Hamas, the Houthis for attacking maritime shipping lanes in the Red Sea, and even Assad's regime in Syria. So they have exported their terror around the world, as well as subjugating their own people in a vicious and cruel manner. There are even reports that they've been deliberately blinding some of their young protesters by shooting riot pellets into their eyes. What we have here is a deeply distressing uprising that is being forced effectively on the people who have been subjugated for so long by this regime. There are now massive water shortages, Andrew and Miriam, in Iran, because their economy is, frankly, a basket case. They have a great depletion of their military resources since America and Israel attacked in June of last year. There was a 12-day conflict, many viewers will recall. And that clearly damaged the Iranians' nuclear capacity and their ability to fire ballistic missiles. But they're still able to subjugate their people, which is what they've been doing.
Most of the newspapers today, Sir Michael, have focused on the death of a young girl. She's 23, Rabina Aminian. She'd been at college. She was quite cheerful. There was photographs of her on her phone. Shot. If you're listening on the, we've got her on screen now. Shot in the back of the head. Her parents found her body and buried her by the roadside. Brutal, unforgiving, and she, I suspect, could become one of the faces of this latest uprising, Sir Michael.
Yes, Andrew, you're right. And frankly, she'll be one, I'm sorry to say, of many dozens of young students. They are tortured, murdered by the roadside, their bodies are dumped. There's no attempt to conceal what they're doing. The security forces there have been subjugating their people for many decades. MI5 in the UK have said, as you were alluding to, Andrew, that they pose a threat to Iranian citizens even on British soil. There are Iranian journalists that have been stabbed, attempts to kidnap people on British soil. This is a regime, as I say, which exports its terror, but when it comes to subjugating its own people, it shows no mercy.
Now, you mentioned that the Iranian regime has been exporting terror in recent years, but it has had its wings seriously clipped by the Americans, by the Israelis over the last year or so. We've seen attacks against Hezbollah. We've seen a massive war against Hamas. And, of course, the 12-day war between Israel, the US and Iran over the summer, which almost destroyed their nuclear capabilities. And it is the collapse of the Iranian economy as a result of those actions that has precipitated these protests. But one of the unknowns at the moment is whether or not the US will get involved. Do you think it's likely that Trump will continue his interventionist approach that we've seen over the last few weeks and actually launch military action in Iran?
Well, I certainly think it's a distinct possibility. It's very difficult to say for sure what President Trump's moves might be, but I think it is a distinct possibility. He will certainly have enough military forces in the area. Apparently, there are no naval aircraft carriers in the region, but there doesn't need to be. There are military bases on land around the region, including in Qatar and Kuwait, and they will have some naval assets. In any event, very often the United States deploys its B-2 bombers, which are based in Missouri, so they fly across from Missouri when they need to strike at Iran. That's what happened in June last year with the 12-day war that you were referring to, Miriam. So I think it is very possible. The other interesting feature about this is that although Iran's oil is heavily sanctioned, perhaps its best customer is China. China was also one of the best customers of Venezuelan oil. The Venezuelan oil has now been interdicted, of course, by the American action. And if the Iranian mullah's regime falls, then that will constitute an issue for China because their supplies of oil may also dry up. And that may amount to a total of about 25% when you include Venezuelan oil of Chinese oil. So that's a factor in this geopolitical issue. Because although, of course, we want to focus on the protesters and freeing them from this despotic regime, the 86-year-old Ayatollah Ali Khamenei is only the second revolutionary supreme leader since 1979. His predecessor, Ruhollah Khamenei, equally despotic. And the two individuals there, now, as I say, the Ayatollah in his 86th year is leading this regime. But whether the Americans act, we'll just have to wait to see.
All right, Sir Michael. That's Sir Michael Ellis, the former Conservative Attorney General. So much, very kind to talk to you and always good to talk to you.
Yeah.
Now, still ahead.
We'll be discussing my latest trip to Hungary, finding out about their immigration policy. We've got exclusive footage from the border about how they've reduced illegal immigration to almost zero.
And British farmers are taking direct action against that broken supply chain. This is a significant ramping up of their industrial action over the government's decision to impose inheritance tax on small family farms for the first time. But a bit of cold out there. Here's some holiday sun for you.
Can't wait to get in that sea.
Lovely and warm.
Just like the feeling of having great travel insurance.
All Clear Travel Insurance sponsors GB News Travel Destinations Forecast.
Hello, here's your latest holiday sun forecast brought to you by the Met Office. On Tuesday, we'll see some unsettled weather across the western Med with some snow across the hills further east. So confirmation then of some outbreaks of rain on Tuesday across the Canaries, Madeira, parts of western Spain and Portugal. Mostly fine, as I say, across the central part of the Med there. Certainly for Italy, one or two showers and some bright spells too. But a risk of snow certainly across the hills of Turkey. As for the coming few days, well, things generally quieten down, but we'll see further rain at times across western parts.
All Clear Travel Insurance sponsors GB News Travel Destinations Forecast.
At GB News, we love to hear from you, our loyal community. So drop us a line at gbnews.com/yoursay. There you can talk to each other and also to the presenters live on air. gbnews.com/yoursay, because GB News is your channel, Britain's news channel.
Good afternoon, Britain. Weekdays from midday.
The University of Bristol has been threatened with legal action by a leading academic who led a recent government review into sex and gender data collection.
Well, Professor Alice Sullivan claims her freedom of speech was restricted after a talk she gave was disrupted by a trans rights protest.
Protesters actually scaled the walls of the building. We were in a first-floor lecture theatre, and they climbed the walls in order to bang on the windows and sort of howl through the windows. It felt incredibly surreal in there. It was like some kind of zombie apocalypse.
What was it, Alice, that these students objected to? So you have recently led this government review, and all you've said, as far as I can see, very rightly, is that police should be recording and the NHS should be recording people's biological sex rather than their gender identity. And you have a very good reason for saying that, which is that cancer referrals have been missed and crimes have been misrecorded because of this idea of gender identity. Is that really what these students object to, or have you said anything else that they might object to?
No, and it is extraordinary. I have literally argued that we should collect data on sex and we should also collect data on transgender identities as well. It's not a zero-sum game. We need accurate data on all groups in order to serve the needs and the human rights of all groups. It's all I've ever said. And I can only imagine that had these protesters actually come in and listened to my talk, they might have been surprised, because I really don't know what they thought I was saying. Obviously, from the perspective of someone outside the room banging on the window, they have no idea what I'm saying.
Absolutely extraordinary. I mean, very good. This is why people need to come in and listen.
GB News, the People's Channel.
Join me, Nana Akwe, for an informative, interactive news programme with a difference. It's fun.
No, he didn't say that, Dave.
I'm so surprised.
I think there's an element of truth to that.
Join me from 3 p.m. every weekend, only on GB News, Britain's news channel.
In the GB Newsroom, we bring you the news as it happens.
With our team of dedicated journalists across the UK.
We're ready to keep you up to date with what's happening every half an hour, every single day. Bulletins here on GB News,
the People's Channel,
Britain's news channel.
Well, it's 11 minutes to 10 and you're watching and listening to Britain's Newsroom on GB News.
Farmers have staged a surprise blockade of 3 major supermarket distribution centres near Peterborough overnight. They're demanding higher prices for their produce and accusing those supermarkets of squeezing the pips, while prices continue to rise for consumers.
Well, loaded lorries were stopped from entering or leaving the sites, and GB News' Jack Carson went down there to see what was going on.
We need the government to wake up and realise what effect they're having on our livelihoods before it's too late. We can't carry on for much longer as we are. Well, we'd like to see a full U-turn on the IHT. We would like to see fairer prices paid to our farmers, and we would like to see tariffs applied to imported produce. Those 3 would be a good step in the right direction. I'm not saying there'll be a complete fix, but it is a step in the right direction.
Well, joining us now, we have a farmer, Clive Bailey. Good morning, Clive. Thank you so much for joining us. Supermarkets sell 90% of produce in the UK. They've become extraordinarily powerful in terms of buying food from farmers. Do you think they're paying fair prices?
No, not at all. I mean, what we've got effectively is like an oligopoly in the UK. Right? Oligopoly, that's the one, yeah. In the UK right now, where, food supply is in the hands of so few major retailers that basically they're able to dictate prices to processors and suppliers to a point that's just not sustainable for farming anymore. The recent milk price cuts, they've cut another 10p off milk. This means that you kind of say 10p below the cost of production for the average dairy farm. That would mean an average size herd could be losing like £20,000 a month now. That's clearly not sustainable. We've got like
let's just jump in there. That's a really significant fact you've just said. The average dairy farmer could be losing £20,000 a month on milk being sold to supermarkets.
Yeah, it's huge, isn't it? I mean, what kind of business, what kind of family business can sustain that? The damage that's been done over this last 18 months with those really misguided changes to inheritance tax, which still haven't been resolved. And that's what farmers, I think, are trying to make clear today. That the solution offered before Christmas, this raising of the thresholds to 2.5 million, that was welcome. It's going to help some of those smaller family farms in lower priced land areas. But actually, the amount of capital invested on farm these days is way in excess of that, with the price of machinery, labour. You know, we're receiving 1990s prices with 2026 costs.
And the decision to target the food chain, these supermarket supply centres, Clyde, that won't have been taken lightly, but it is a significant ramping up of your industrial action.
Yeah, well, as we said right at the start of this, we've tried to do this. We've tried to engage with politicians and ministers to try to find workable solutions. We understand the problem. We want the industry has a lot of problems beyond just the inheritance tax issue. This fairness in supply chain is important and needs addressing. You've got Tesco's made £3 billion last year. You know, the last 2 or 3 years they've been 2.7, 2.8 billion. You've got food prices and food contributing to inflation. Yet farm gate prices are back in the 1990s. It doesn't make sense. Somewhere anyone can see, somewhere in the middle, there's something going on that's just not fair there.
Now, until the 1960s, the power of the supermarkets was constrained by something called the resale price maintenance, where farmers and other suppliers were allowed to set a minimum price at which supermarkets could sell their goods. Would you support a return to that kind of price arrangement?
I think we've got to look at mechanisms that do protect this and make sure that, you know, agriculture is sustainable. I mean, you talk about that, you get back to the 60s. You look at the rise of the supermarket over that last 40 or 50 years, and it's not just farming. Look what it's done to the high street. As the supermarkets and their profits has become more and more dominant, farming has been on the opposite trajectory, a downward trajectory. The same with the high street. You know, they've kind of pretty much killed the high street. The things they did over Christmas, they sell vegetables at, you know, kind of these 8p a kilo vegetables. How can a farmer, you know, make his farm shop work to try to compete with that when they take away the opportunity at Christmas, a peak time of year? They kind of sell stuff at, you know, kind of 10 times less than the cost of production. No farmer can do it.
I'm so sorry, we're out of time. We are going to have to leave there, but thank you so much for joining us, and good luck. I think GB News viewers will be very much behind you.
And can I just again say to GB News viewers and listeners, make sure when you go to a supermarket, buy British.
We'll be back with more with Iran after this.
Expect warm spells with the odd rude interruption. Box Boiler sponsors the weather on GB News.
Hello, here's your latest weather update from the Met Office for GB News. Conditions look much milder across the UK today than of late, but we do hold on to fairly unsettled weather too. Outbreaks of rain in most areas and fairly blustery, especially towards the northwest of the UK. Here we could well see some gales, if not severe gale force winds, certainly through the morning. Gusts of wind towards the northwest there up to 70, even 80 miles an hour. Further south, we'll see a bit of brightness to start the day, particularly across the east and northeast of England. But notice these showers towards the southwest, pushing their way northeastwards across England and Wales as we go through the day. And some of those showers merging to give some longer spells of rain too into the afternoon. Much milder than of late, temperatures in the north up to 7 to 9 degrees, peaking at 12 degrees down towards the southeast, that's into the mid-50s in Fahrenheit. As we go towards the end of the day, we do hold on to quite blustery weather across the far north and northwest of Scotland. Further outbreaks of rain to come here, and still a risk of gales in the most exposed spots. The south and east of Scotland will see some clear spells and a scattering of showers. And across the north of England and Northern Ireland, we'll also see a mixture of clear spells and scattered showers to end the day. Further south, it's mostly fine towards the southwest with lighter winds here, with most of the showers across the southeast of England at this stage. Heading into the evening then and into the overnight period, those winds will start to ease across the far north and northeast of the UK, and it's the central slice of the UK set to see the most unsettled weather. Outbreaks of rain across Northern Ireland, southern Scotland and the north of England. To the southeast of that, mostly dry, fairly cloudy, and a touch of frost forming with some slightly colder air starting to tuck back in there across the northwest of Scotland. As for Tuesday, the air could become cold enough across the far north there to give a little bit of winteriness once again, particularly across the northwest Highlands and across the southern uplands of Scotland. Elsewhere though, it's a mostly cloudy day in store with outbreaks of rain developing on and off through the day, most of that on the fairly light side. And wherever you are, temperatures stay pretty respectable for the time of year, especially away from the far northwest. Here, temperatures around 5 to 7 degrees, but once again peaking at 10, even 11 Celsius down towards the south and southeast.
Expect warm spells with the odd rude interruption. Boxed Boilers sponsors the weather on GB News.
Thank you, Britain, for making GB News Radio such a huge success. Whether you're in the car, on the go, or listening at home, thank you for choosing us as your radio station.
Good morning. This is the latest AI travel news from GBNews.com. On the M8, traffic is restricted eastbound between Junction 3 and Junction 2 after a crash. On the A55 at Britannia Bridge, a 30 mph limit is in place until further notice. In Derbyshire, the A38 northbound between the A61 at Alfreton and Northamptonshire's M1 has one lane closed following an incident, with delays of around 10 minutes. In Staffordshire, the M54 westbound between the M6 and Junction 1 has lane restrictions for road management. And on the trains, Avanti West Coast and Cross Country have disruption between Motherwell and Lanark or Carstairs. For more travel news, go to gbnews.com.
There's just 3 weeks left to grab your chance to win our biggest cash prize to date. An incredible £85,000 in tax-free cash could be yours. Cash to make 2026 the year of yes. That's yes to holidays, yes to treats, yes to making all of those dreams come true this year. Just make sure you don't miss out. For another chance to win £85,000 cash, text cash to 63225. One entry costs £2.50 plus one standard network rate message, or text bonus to 63225. 5 entries cost £5 plus one standard network rate message. Go to gbnews.com/win. Entries start at £2.50. Call 0903 686 3232. Calls cost £2.50 plus your network access charge. Or post your name and number to GB18 PO Box 8690 Derby DE1 9TT. UK only. Entrance must be 18 or over. Lines close at 4 p.m. on the 30th of January. Please check the closing time if listening or watching on demand. Good luck.
Mornings don't have to be tiresome, especially if you have the right company.
Wake up to news as it happens, opinion and debate, and of course, a little bit of entertainment too.
Because when the kettle's on, we're on.
That's Breakfast on GB News, a show worth waking up for.
Every morning from 6 a.m.
Only on the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
We'll spread the news, you spread the word.
From the school run to the home run, watch a new show for all of Britain.
So he can say whatever he wants.
A straight-talking show where all voices are heard.
And, you know, when are we going to stop talking about smashing the gangs and actually do it?
With the stories that matter from every part of our country.
There's a bit of a crash landing there for your Chancellor.
Bold, fearless and standing up for you. That's me, Martin Dordme, 3 p.m. till 6 p.m, weekdays, here only on GB News. The People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Good morning, it's 10 o'clock on Monday the 12th of January. We're live across the United Kingdom. This is Britain's Newsroom with Andrew Pearce and Miriam Cates.
Iran is warning the United States they will retaliate against any attack after more than 500 people, I think it's much higher now, reported dead as protests spiral across the entire country.
And that includes a 23-year-old student protester who was shot in the back of the head and buried by the roadside.
We need the government to wake up and realise what effect they're having on our livelihoods before it's too late. We can't carry on for much longer as we are.
Mounting pressure, British farmers taking direct action against the food supply chain, which could threaten the grub on your table.
Elsewhere, the Met Police are boasting of their lowest homicide rates in 11 years. That's even though 97 people were killed in 2025. But this comes as it's revealed that 2 sex offenders and 300 people with criminal records are still on the Met's payroll.
The most vigorous, most serious you could possibly be on these issues. That data is a moment in time.
Britain's most senior former military chiefs are sounding the alarm, making a final appeal for this government to stop the handover of the Chagos Islands, which is going to cost the taxpayer billions, ahead of a crunch vote in Parliament today. Now, you've been travelling again.
I have. I've been in Budapest for most of last
one
week.
of my favourite cities in the whole
It's
of Europe.
beautiful.
And
it was cold. There was a lot of snow. It was actually more snow than they've had in the last 15 years. So we were very lucky, really, to be there at that time.
But everything didn't grind to a halt.
It didn't grind to a halt, actually. And one of the things that we did on Friday was we drove 100 miles south from Budapest down to the border between Hungary and Serbia, where they have built a 155-kilometre-long fence, 4.5 metres high, topped with barbed wire, to stop mass migration across the Serbian border. And it's been extraordinarily effective.
It's probably where... Did they copy Trump, or did Trump copy them the first time round?
Ah, that's a good question. Well, it was first built in 2015, so 11 years ago.
So Trump got the idea from them?
Quite possibly. And it was in response to that migration crisis in 2015, when lots of people were fleeing the Arab world, and hundreds of thousands came through Hungary. And the Hungarian government asked people, do you want mass migration? They said no. They built a fence. And coming up very shortly, we've got some exclusive footage from the border discussing those measures, so do stay with us.
Miriam says that migration crisis in 2015, you mean the one that is still ongoing in this country?
Exactly.
Because we still can't stop the small boats, they're still crossing over, and legal migration is still at ridiculous levels.
And the Hungarian foreign minister told Charlie Peters exclusively that he thinks the answer to this is communication, that our government should be much more clear. Don't come to Britain, you can't stay here. They think that's a key part of it.
We give them benefits, we give them a hotel, we keep saying they're going to kick them out of the hotels, when, we're going to smash the gangs, when. But the fact is, they even give them the, even provide the life jackets.
I think the French do that, but they make sure they take them back. But that's the point, we're communicating the exact opposite. We're communicating you're welcome here, rather than...
And are we, as of yet, still taking away their mobile phones so we can find out who they spoke to, who the people smuggler was? Of course we're not.
No.
We're a soft touch.
Lots to learn from the Hungarians. Well, we'd love to know what you think. Send your views, post your comments by visiting
gbnews.com/your say. But first, here is the news with the Sam Francis.
Very good morning to you from the newsroom just after 10 o'clock. Well, the top story this hour. The death toll in Iran is still climbing, and climbing fast, as the regime brutally tightens its grip on nationwide protests. Now, the biggest challenge to the Iranian leadership in years. 44 people have been killed so far, more than 10,000 others arrested in unrest now aimed directly at the supreme leader. And the anger isn't staying inside Iran. In Washington, Donald Trump says that the leadership wants to negotiate, but has warned he hasn't ruled out taking military action.
We're watching it very closely. If they start killing people like they have in the past, I think they're going to get hit very hard by the United States.
Meanwhile, in London, protesters were back outside Iran's embassy again this weekend, even tearing down an Iranian flag for a second day running. All as pressure grows on Sir Keir Starmer to ban Iran's Revolutionary Guard. Meanwhile, Iran has shut down large parts of the internet across the country, making it harder to verify what's happening on the ground, just as tensions spill onto the streets here in the UK. And that comes as the Met Police Commissioner Sir Mark Rowley spoke to us earlier today. He says the situation has left the police in London caught very much in the middle of situation.
We're the people on the street dealing with tension and trying to manage that tension and deal with illegal behaviour. So, for example, there was a protest over the weekend outside a restaurant, and we've made an arrest there, and we're looking to the CPS as whether we can prosecute somebody for in time for racial hatred from that offence. So we'll keep doing those sort of things. We'll keep intervening when people break the law, and trying to find that balance between freedom of speech, which I know is really important to people, and your ability to express your opinion, but also balancing that with not doing it in a way which intimidates or affects the rights of others.
Staying with news from London, and the capital's murder rate has fallen to its lowest level in more than a decade, according to new figures from the Metropolitan Police. 97 homicides were recorded last year, giving London a lower murder rate than New York, Berlin or Milan. And teenage killings have also dropped to their lowest level since 2012. Police Chief Mark Rowley says targeted operations against gangs and knife carriers are shattering fewer families, calling it the product of amazing police work. But City Hall and opposition figures are still clashing over whether Londoners actually feel any safer. Tens of thousands of people across Sussex and Kent are starting the week without running water after Kent County Council declared a major incident. South East Water blames Storm Goretti, freezing weather and a power failure at a pumping station, with 14 postcodes still dry around East Grinstead, Frant and Tunbridge Wells. Schools, libraries and even parts of the local hospital have been forced to shut, with bottled water being handed out and tankers sent in to keep essential services running. The government is rolling out sweeping new parental leave rights from April this year after its Employment Rights Act passed into law at the end of last year. Ministers are today confirming that unpaid parental leave will become a day one right, meaning parents won't have to wait for months before taking time off to care for a child. And in a major shift, bereaved parents who lose a partner before their baby's first birthday will also be entitled to a full year of leave to care for their child. Prime Minister Sir Keir Starmer says that for too long, working people were left without the basic rights, adding that ends now. But the Conservatives warn that the changes could hit businesses, calling it an unemployment bill that will destroy jobs, they say, not protect them. A simple, low-cost eye gel has restored sight to people with a rare form of blindness in what doctors are calling a major breakthrough. Researchers at Moorfields Eye Hospital say the gel, known as HPMC, returned vision to 7 out of 8 patients with hyptony, a condition that causes the eye to collapse in on itself. After a year of injections, the eye was pumped back to its normal shape, allowing light to reach the retina again. One patient said she's now so close to being able to drive again. The change, she says, is phenomenal. And Timothée Chalamet was one of the big winners at this year's Golden Globes, beating Leonardo DiCaprio and George Clooney to Best Actor in a Musical or Comedy for Marty Supreme. Despite that, though, it was DiCaprio's film One Battle After Another that dominated the night, picking up 4 awards, including Best Musical or Comedy Film and Best Director. Meanwhile, Irish star Jessie Buckley took Best Drama Actress for Hamnet, which also pulled off a surprise win for Best Drama Film too. Congratulations to all the winners. Those are the latest headlines. I'll be back with you shortly.
Tune in to GB News Radio wherever you are. Online, on DAB digital radio, on TuneIn, on Radio Player, on Nation Player and on your smart speaker. Just say, play GB News.
Hello, welcome back to Britain's Newsroom. We're live across the United Kingdom on GB News with Andrew Pearce and Miriam Cates. Lots
of people getting in touch?
I will check later, but we need to move on to our top story.
We're very pleased to hear from Grumpy Grandad.
Yes, Grumpy Grandad's been in touch on Twitter. We haven't heard from him for a while on Your Say, so good to have him back.
So the big news, at least 500 dead. I suspect the figure's getting into thousands after protests in Iran over the weekend escalated. Tehran has warned Washington it will retaliate if they intervene.
But the US has joined calls for Downing Street to prescribe Iran's Islamic Revolutionary Guard Corps.
Let's talk to Iranian human rights activist Dr. Laleh Tangsiri, who joins us now. Dr. Tangsiri, good morning to you. May I just ask you initially, do you have family in Iran? And if so, have you heard whether they're OK?
Good morning to you, and thank you for having me. I do have family and friends in Iran, and I'm shattered as last night we came from the rally. We have been in rallies every day in front of number 10, in front of the Iranian embassy, and been chanting, "Long live the king. We want the Pahlavi back because he's the only saviors of Iranians, and he's the name being shouted on the streets in Iran." So after coming back home, one of my friends messages me and says, I'm having a very difficult time. My best friend and cousin has been shot down. His name is Dr. Masood. I will speak to his family, and I hope that they would dare to be on your show and speak to yourselves about what they are going through. I only heard from them 4 hours after they had heard this news.
Dr. Tangsiri, we're very sorry to hear that. What part of Iran were they in? Because we know these disturbances are across the country now.
This was north of Iran, but this is happening everywhere in Iran. But because of the internet blackout, we can't hear anything anymore from our friends and family. But the news that we are, getting, some people have managed to get in touch with their families just maybe a few seconds, and they just cry. It's very bad. It's very bad. So what we need from Europe and America is not to let Iranian people down, to be beside them, to do what they promised for so many years. There has been a discussion. This has been a discussion in the UK, not only about the people in Iran, but even for the security of us, people living in the UK. Why should we censor ourselves? Why should we be scared? Why should we not have freedom of speech in this country? Why is the IRGC not still be prescribed as a terrorist organization?
And on that, Dr. Tangsiri, when Keir Starmer was leader of the opposition, he said he would prescribe that group as a terrorist organisation, and he's not done it. And you mentioned the Crown Prince. I've interviewed him in the Daily Mail today. He says he's very disappointed that Sir Keir Starmer has barely spoken out about what's happening in Iran.
Not only Keir Starmer, but even the former Prime Minister, this was one of his promises to prescribe IRGC when he was being elected. And we believed in him, and still it hasn't been done after so many years gone. What I really want you to Miriam and dear peers, thank you for having me. What we really, really plead from you is please make sure that our Crown Prince and his family are being protected. He is the only chance and voice for the Iranian people, the only alternative that we all trust in, and he has to be protected. His life is very important. Millions and millions of Iranians are counting on him to come back and settle peace in Iran, in Middle East and the world.
Dr. Lala Tangsiri, thank you so much for joining us this morning, and we do send our very best wishes to you and all your family, and our hopes that this will be over soon with as few lives lost as possible. It is just a horrible, horrible situation.
Can I just please ask for one more question?
Sure.
Please put more sanctions on the Iranian government. They have businesses in the UK. They need to be banned from this country. Their families have to be deported to Iran. Why do they still have all businesses and they are doing whatever they want? They have to be expelled. Shut down the embassies. Please shut down the embassies. These are houses of terrors.
Thank you so much.
Thank you very much.
Very moving, very moving. And the very best, and we hope your family and friends can avoid the worst of this.
Absolutely. Much to come there, I think.
The Crown Prince, I interviewed for the Mail today, he says this is the Berlin Wall moment. Why is Starmer silent? Incredible,
we
isn't
will
it?
see.
He's always meddling into foreign affairs and everything else, but he's saying nothing about this.
Yes, well, we'll be digging into that later. Now, last week, I went to Hungary with our national reporter, Charlie Peters, to look at their strong anti-immigration stance. Here's some of what we got up to.
Welcome to the Hungarian-Serbian border with me, Charlie Peters, and Miriam Cates, GB News, of course, here visiting the immigration facilities and the deterrence against illegal migration into Hungary. We're here at the invitation of the Hungarian embassy, along with plenty of other journalists from Britain and further overseas. And Miriam, what we've just heard from the Border Patrol agents showing us some of the capabilities they have to deter illegal migration.
Absolutely, and we can see these enormous fences, the barbed wire, they've got 200 cameras along the length of the border, the optical wire, so lots of physical deterrence. But also the law supports them keeping out the illegal migrants. So if anybody does break through, if they do get over, under or through the fence, the border guards are allowed to detain them using force and then literally push them back through a gate into Serbia. So even those who do get through, and that's very few now that they've implemented these measures, they have the legal powers to deport them effectively. And it just seems crazy from a British point of view that we are surrounded by sea, we've got this natural natural moat. And yet we're still having tens of thousands of people come into our country illegally, where a country that's perhaps much harder to defend has managed successfully to keep people out.
And just looking at this fence here, I mean, 4.5 metres high. The first one went in 2015. Build this extended fence due to some concerns about more people still getting in during that period. Well over 100,000 entering in just 1 month in September 2015. But a year later, September 2016, those numbers were in the hundreds. 156 people made the crossing. So they were showing us that the deterrence works. And they've also talked through some of the capabilities they've had to react to with the gangs trying to smuggle people into Hungary using wire cutters, climbing over the fence. Even, they said, in 2019, around 30 tunnels were discovered in this area. Plenty of things for them to have to react to, Miriam. And it does seem a little bit strange, doesn't it? Reflecting on our own struggles back home with a natural moat, as you might describe it, within the English Channel, and coming up to even more resistance to try and deal with those crossings.
Absolutely. And the other feature of their success has been very close cooperation with the Serbians. They mentioned that in 2022, the situation got very violent, with some of the gangs starting to use physical force against the border guards. Big rocks were thrown. I think 40 border guards were injured, vehicles were injured. And at that point, the Serbians and the Hungarians decided to work together. They now do joint patrols. They share all intelligence when the gangs are approaching a border, after they've crossed the border. And I think if you compare that with the situation between Britain and France, you know, we've paid the French £500 million to help us secure our borders, but that relationship just is not working. The French are not helping. They're not preventing people from crossing. And again, you can't just rely on the physical infrastructure. There will always be a way for people to get through. That close working relationship with the other side of the border seems to be crucial to their success. But I think what I keep coming back to is... Well,
very James Bond, Miriam.
Yeah, well, it was about -7, -8. It was pretty cold, but a very warm coat, I have to say. Well, joining us now to discuss the situation in Hungary further, we've got the Executive Director of the Migration Research Institute, Victor Marseille, joining us live from Budapest. Good morning, Mr. Marseille. Thank you so much for joining us. It was absolutely fascinating to see firsthand the situation at the border with Serbia. You've cut illegal immigration to almost zero. Are the EU happy that you're protecting the border?
Good morning, everybody. If you're reading the news, you get the proper answer, which is absolutely no, unfortunately. Hungary was under trial by the European Court, and finally, the government have to pay €1 million daily because the European Court of Justice declared that Hungary didn't provide enough space for asylum seekers to apply for asylum in the territory of Hungary, which is completely contradicting to the Schengen Treaty, which make a commitment for Hungary to protect the border, and not only the border of Hungary, but also the external border of the European Union. Unfortunately, it's a political game, not a policy game, and it seems that until Hungary is protecting its own border and the border of the European Union, the country has to pay this €1 million daily.
Now, you've built this very impressive fence that's a successful physical barrier to immigration, but you've also changed the legal system as well and the process of applying for asylum in Hungary. Can you tell us more about that?
Yeah, it's very important that physical barrier alone is not enough to protect the country and stop illegal mass immigration. Legal environment is very important, and of course the cooperation of police, and a certain time in the last 10 years the involvement of even the Hungarian army to protect the fences and stop illegal immigration. What was very important decision by the government, that they declared Serbia as a safe third country. And, you know, there's no war, there's no persecution in the country, I mean in Serbia. So this is why Hungary decided that anybody who's coming from Serbia can be a refugee or an asylum seeker, because they could apply for asylum in Serbia. It's a very strong position of the government that we are ready to open the borders for asylum seekers. If Hungary is the first safe country, it's the case, for example, with Ukrainian refugees, because Ukraine and Hungary, we are neighborhood. There is a war in Ukraine, so Hungary opens its borders for the Ukrainian refugees. But people are crossing 5, 6, 10 countries from between the countries of origin, and Hungary, it's clear that they can be asylum seekers because they would have many possibilities to apply asylum for certain safe countries.
Now, you're already in contravention of the EU's rules at the moment. You're being fined for that. But later on this year, there will be an increased demand on Hungary, won't there, to take more asylum seekers and even to build a camp capable of holding 10,000 or more. What do you think Hungary's response will be to that?
The position of the current government is very clear. Hungary will not open its borders for the mass migration. And under the new EU Pact on Asylum and Migration, there is a compulsory quota system, and Hungary should accept a certain number of asylum seekers. Prime Minister Viktor Orbán declared that Hungary will not accept any forced asylum seekers sending in the quota system to Hungary. And the other issue is that while in one document in November, the EU declared that there is no migratory situation in Hungary. In another document, it declared that Hungary should be ready to accept at least 8,000 asylum seekers in the same time, which means annually during the border procedure, almost 40,000 asylum seekers annually. So in June, the system should work, but again, the Hungarian government declared that they will not accept the dictation from Brussels, and it will resist to the new pact.
Well, Mr. Marsai, thank you so much for joining us from Budapest. Great to see you this morning. Now, we do need to read a reply from the Home Office, who have said that we are furious at the level of illegal migrants, but we are restoring order and control to our borders. Almost 50,000 illegal migrants have been removed or deported from British soil under this government, up nearly a quarter.
Home Secretary has announced the most sweeping reforms to tackle illegal migration in decades, removing the incentives that bring illegal migrants to the UK and scaling up the return of those with no right to be here. Right, Miriam. So, do they still get benefits when they get here? Yes. Do they still get hotels when they get here? Yes. So what has she removed?
Quite.
And are they still keeping their phones? Almost certainly.
Yeah, it is such a different situation over there. It's absolutely fascinating.
Do you think the people who write these statements go on creative writing courses?
Well, it's certainly creative. Got to give them that. Well, coming up next, farmers have put on a surprise blockade near Peterborough, insisting on increased farm gate prices amid the ongoing consumer price rise.
We're going to talk about that and more with Claire Muldoon and Matthew Talbot, our fabulous paper reviewers. This is Britain's Newsroom on GB News.
Westminster's full of talk, but out here, it's the real world.
Am I allowed to talk now?
No, that's it. This is where it matters, real people and real lives. That's what politics is all about.
The fact is Trump made a good start. No.
Straight answers, no spin, and just a couple of pints.
How many fingers have I got up?
About 10. So join me for Lee Anderson's Real World every Friday at 7 p.m. only on GB News. The People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
GB News Breakfast, every day from 6 a.m.
Well, pub bosses say they face financial ruin after Rachel Reeves' stealth tax raid in the budget as pint prices are ramped up, opening hours are cut and staff are laid off in desperate attempts to keep running.
So this morning we're asking, would you pay more for your pint to save local pubs?
Well, joining us now is pub owner Mark Bridgen and Communications Officer for the IEA, Reem Ibrahim. Really good to see you both this morning. Mark, let's start with you. We've spoken to you a lot about your lovely pub. Would you want people to pay more for a pint in order to save your business?
Well, it's looking like the only option. Yeah, with the increased taxes on every level and now the stress around rates increase and valuation agency, I don't know anyone that is making any money. So it feels like the only thing to do is to raise your prices. The irony is that actually at the moment, many of us are actually putting down our prices to try and get people through the doors. You know, in a desperate bid to stay alive, we're having to, try and offer even more value.
Do you think the government is just tone deaf to the plight of our landlords of pubs and restaurants across the country?
They absolutely are. I mean, over 21,000 pubs have closed since 1980. That's half of that in the last 2 decades alone. So I really do think that the government have taxed, regulated, restricted pubs to the oblivion. But this is where I disagree with Mark. I don't think it's up to businesses themselves to say, you know what, we're going to remove our profit margins even further. We know that the hikes in national insurance contributions and increasing the minimum wage have a huge impact on small businesses.
GB News, the People's Channel.
You want to know what's really going on in the corridors of power? Labour don't know what to do with you half the time, and that makes you quite lethal in the chamber. Get behind the headlines with Chopper's Political Podcast. Join me, Christopher Hope, as I sit down with the great and the good of British politics. We'll see where this ruling takes us. These are the stories shaping our nation. Chopper's Political Podcast, available now on all platforms. Listen in and stay ahead.
Well, it is 27 minutes past 10. You're watching Britain's Newsroom with Andrew Pearce and Miriam Cates.
We've got the British giveaway now, so you can win a huge cash prize of £85,000 tax-free. Here's how you do it.
There's just 3 weeks left to grab your chance to win our biggest cash prize to date. An incredible £85,000 in tax-free cash could be yours. Cash to make 2026 the year of yes. That's yes to holidays, yes to treats, yes to making all of those dreams come true this year. What would you spend all of that cash on? 2026 could be the year you spend more time spending with an incredible £85,000 in your bank. Just make sure you don't miss out. For another chance to win £85,000 cash, text cash to 63225. One entry costs £2.50 plus one standard network rate message. Or text bonus to 63225. 5 entries cost £5 plus one standard network rate message. Go to gbnews.com/win. Entries start at £2.50. Call 0903 686 3232. Calls cost £2.50 plus your network access charge. Or post your name and number to GB18 PO Box 8690 Derby DE1 9TT. UK only. Entrants must be 18 or over. Lines close at 4 p.m. on the 30th of January. The winner may be contacted live on GB News, week commencing 9th of February. Please check the closing time if listening or watching on demand. Good luck.
Well, it's time now for our paper review, and we're joined by the former Labour advisor Matthew Torbett and political commentator Claire Muldoon here in the studio. Good morning to both of you.
Good morning.
What should we start with?
I think, should we talk about the farmers? Because this is a significant ramping up.
Hugely significant. And they're in Peterborough, and they are blockading big supermarket chains like Tesco's, because we know when we're going to a supermarket, the loss leader is the milk. And the milk has come from our dairy herds and our dairy farmers in this country. And I think it's ridiculous because they are squeezed so much. They really are the farmers in respect of producing it all. Now, we don't get up at stupid o'clock in the morning to go and milk the cattle. The farmers do 7 days a week. We really rely on them as a food source, as a source of milk and dairy, as so many sources, and they have been thrashed time and again by supermarkets and indeed now this government with their hellish track on inheritance tax. They are pushed, squeezed, and you wonder why suicide is so high with the farming community, why it's so difficult for them to do it. And people like Clarkson have actually highlighted
he's done a great job
the mire that farmers are in this country.
Matthew, we had a farmer on earlier who said you just lose money on milk every week. Some farms, he said, are losing $20,000 a month on milk to the supermarket because the supermarkets hammer them. I mean, I think what they could do is just stop providing it. They might as well.
And I think, listen, I have no truck with actual farmers. Like, this isn't, for me, what this is about. It's about fairness. And I think if you take where I'm from in Stockport, you go to the nicer bit, somewhere like Bramhall, average house will cost you about 450 grand. So if you're a young couple and you've got in assets £500,000, you'll pay £70,000 in inheritance tax on that. That's the way the system's set up. For a farmer to pay £70,000, they'd have to have a minimum of £1.35 million in assets, and actually it could go as far as £3.35 million. And that's because of how agricultural property relief and inheritance tax is set up. And that's because they'll pay a rate of 20%, not 40%. Now, therefore, I would feel a little bit for actual farmers. When you look at the research that the University of Warwickshire have done, their Centre for Tax Studies, only 44% of farms in this country made any money in the last 5 years from selling food. Therefore, it's used quite clearly, this loophole, by very wealthy people to buy up land and therefore avoid inheritance tax. So this is more to close a loophole, not to necessarily punish
What's that got to do with the price of milk?
Because otherwise people... It's about having a fair tax system.
Exactly.
And if we allow rich people... Andrew Lloyd Webber isn't going out milking the cows, is he? And this is the problem. He owns a farm. He says he's a farmer. He's not a farmer. He's in his 80s. He does nothing.
He's landed gentry then. That's a completely different point.
This is the problem. It's to stop people like that taking the mick out of a system that allows them to
crack a nut, Matthew, because how many of these billionaires are there?
Well, 56%. That's the majority.
Isn't the problem that the supermarkets have too much power?
Yes.
That this isn't some sort of free market utopia.
It's not a free market.
And until 1964, farmers and other producers were allowed to set a minimum price at which supermarkets could sell their produce. Now, that was banned by legislation in 1964, and since then, we've seen the inexorable rise of supermarkets and total dominance. Is it time to bring back price controls?
I really think so, and I'm normally against any capital intervention in markets, etc. But in this case, I think we need to help our farmers, save our farmers. We are a nation, we are an island. We should be self-sufficient, and we're not. And it's because of pricing like this. It's because of the tractor sticker on the meat products that we might choose to buy that it's British born and bred cattle or pigs or whatever. And I think we do need to help them out as much as we possibly can. We do need to start eating far more seasonally than we are. There's too many polytunnels all over the country, all over the world, in fact, where you can get a tomato grown here in the middle of winter. No way, that's not right, and I'm fed up with this carbon footprint nonsense as well. We get our own, we get them, we look after them, and we feed ourselves from our land.
I mean, it feels like something snapped here, Matthew, because they've been very careful in their strategy, the farmers. They've kept the public on side, these stoppages, the tractors rolling into town centres. By going for the food chain for the first time, that is a significant step forward. And they know that might risk losing the public.
I actually think it should work, because nobody can afford food and drink at the moment. Anybody that goes shopping knows for a fact that everything has gone up, but you're getting less. You have the case of shrinkflation. I'd like to welcome all three comrades today talking about, minimum pricing and whatever. My only concern with that...
Is there a touch of irony in that remark?
Not at all. Not at all.
Yes.
No, but I think it's a serious issue. The problem being the supermarkets are swines. They will absolutely just add more onto the price of milk, and therefore I'm not sure where the middle ground on this is with regards to that. But something has to be done for those who are proper farmers doing good work.
We have to buy British.
Yes, all the time.
That's what we have to do.
That's what we have to do.
If it's a few pennies more, buy British.
Buy British.
Well, Claire, Matthew, we'll have more from you later, but we're going to move on now to our 60-second news update with Sam Francis.
Very good morning Good morning to you. A look at the headlines. The death toll in Iran is surging as the regime cracks down on protests now aimed directly at the supreme leader. Well, we now know of at least 544 people who've been killed and more than 10,000 arrested. Donald Trump says Tehran wants to negotiate but hasn't ruled out military action.
We're watching it very closely. If they start killing people like they have in the past, I think they're going to get hit very hard by the United States.
Here, meanwhile, the government's backing the protesters and MPs are pushing to ban Iran's Revolutionary Guard. London's murder rate is now at its lowest in more than a decade, with 97 homicides last year. That's fewer than New York, Berlin or Milan. Met boss Mark Rowley says targeted policing is shattering fewer families, though critics say Londoners still don't feel safer. Tens of thousands of homes across Sussex and Kent still have no running water after Storm Gretti and a power failure forced a major incident. Schools, libraries and parts of a local hospital have had to shut. New parental leave laws are coming into force from April, the government's confirmed, giving parents day one rights to unpaid leave and boosting access for paternity pay for thousands more fathers. Sir Keir Starmer says it brings basic rights and security, but the Tories warn it could cost jobs. And Timothée Chalamet has beaten Leonardo DiCaprio and George Clooney to win Best Actor at the Golden Globes, but DiCaprio's one battle after another did manage to clean up with 4 awards. Meanwhile, Jessie Buckley took Best Actress for Hamnet as the Oscars race heats up. Those are the latest headlines for now. I'll have a full roundup for you at 11.
Take the GB News family with you on any device. As long as you have an internet connection, tune into GB News anywhere on the planet or beyond.
Coming up next, should social media be banned for under-16s? We'll be discussing that with the Conservative Party leader, Kemi Badenoch, next. You're watching Britain's Newsroom on GB News.
Hello, here's your latest weather update from the Met Office for GB News. Conditions look much milder across the UK today than of late, but we do hold on to fairly unsettled weather too. Outbreaks of rain in most areas and fairly blustery, especially towards the northwest of the UK. Here we could well see some gales, if not severe gale force winds, certainly through the morning. Gusts of wind towards the northwest there up to 70, even 80 miles an hour. Further south, we'll see a bit of brightness to start the day, particularly across the east and northeast of England. But notice these showers towards the southwest, pushing their way northeastwards across England and Wales as we go through the day. And some of those showers merging to give some longer spells of rain too into the afternoon. Much milder than of late, temperatures in the north up to 7 to 9 degrees, peaking at 12 degrees down towards the southeast, that's into the mid-50s in Fahrenheit. As we go towards the end of the day, we do hold on to quite blustery weather across the far north and northwest of Scotland. Further outbreaks of rain to come here. There's still a risk of gales in the most exposed spots. The south and east of Scotland will see some clear spells and a scattering of showers. And across the north of England and Northern Ireland, we'll also see a mixture of clear spells and scattered showers to end the day. Further south, it's mostly fine towards the southwest with lighter winds here, with most of the showers across the southeast of England at this stage. Heading into the evening then and into the overnight period, those winds will start to ease across the far north and northeast of the UK, and it's the central slice of the UK set to see the most unsettled weather. Outbreaks of rain across Northern Ireland, southern Scotland and the north of England. To the southeast of that, mostly dry, fairly cloudy, and a touch of frost forming with some slightly colder air starting to tuck back in there across the northwest of Scotland. As for Tuesday, the air could become cold enough across the far north there to give a little bit of winteriness once again, particularly across the northwest Highlands and across the southern uplands of Scotland. Elsewhere though, it's a mostly cloudy day in store with outbreaks of rain developing on and off through the day, most of that on the fairly light side. And wherever you are, temperatures stay pretty respectable for the time of year, especially away from the far northwest. Here, temperatures around 5 to 7 degrees, but once again peaking at 10, even 11 Celsius down towards the south and southeast.
Thank you, Britain, for the thousands of you who are becoming friends of GB News every week.
You're not only watching and listening to our programmes, you're becoming part of them too.
Good morning. This is the latest AI travel news from gbnews.com. The A92 Tay Road Bridge is closed to double-deck vehicles with a 30 miles per hour limit because of high winds. On the A55 at Britannia Bridge, traffic in both directions is limited to 30 miles per hour until further notice. In East Riding of Yorkshire, a broken-down vehicle on the A63 eastbound between the A1034 and the A15 has one lane closed. Around Nottinghamshire, expect 30-minute delays on the A52 westbound between the A46 and the A6011. And on the trains, Avanti West Coast and Cross Country are disrupted between Motherwell and Lanark and Carstairs. For more travel news, go to gbnews.com.
Welcome back to Britain's Newsroom. It's 20 to 11.
Under 16-year-olds would be banned from using social media if the Conservatives win the next general election.
Yes, the Tory party leader Kemi Badenoch has said that she would raise the age of consent to protect children from harmful content online.
Comes after Australia implemented a similar measure last month.
Well, we're now joined by the Conservative Party leader, Kemi Badenoch. Mrs Badenoch, good morning. Thank you so much for joining GB News. Now, this has been a topic of debate for some time. The government says it's not interested currently in a ban, but you've come out with a different position. Explain why for us, please.
Miriam, I'm not hearing you perfectly, but I think you asked why we are putting out this policy.
Yes, thank you.
And if so, that's because we need some common sense in this area. We want freedom for adults, but we need to protect children. And it is quite clear that social media companies have designed these platforms to be addictive, and they are profiting from the distraction and anxiety of a lot of young people. We don't ask nightclubs to provide orange squash for children. We keep children out of adult spaces. And what I have seen, even as a parent myself, a very tech-savvy parent, remember I'm an engineer, I know how this stuff works, is it's very hard for parents to do this. So let's make it easier and just get the children off these platforms.
How do you enforce it, Mrs. Badenoch?
So this is one of the things that is going to be difficult. We don't want full censorship. We can see that the Online Safety Act didn't work properly. And one of the things that we need to start recognizing is that government can't fix or design everything. So what we're doing is giving notice to the social media companies and industry as well. Let's talk, let's figure out how we can do this together in a sensible and pragmatic way. We know that there is new technology that is available. We don't need to do things like mandatory digital ID like Labour is pushing. There is a sensible and better way to do this. And let's be honest, not all children will come off it. Some parents will help their children go onto it. Others will figure out how to circumvent it. But the idea is to get a critical mass of children off social media looking at content that is not meant for them.
Now, I think it's safe to assume that the US government and US tech companies are going to push back very hard against any increased regulation in this space. They say it's all about free speech. Do you think it has more to do with US tech profits than protecting children?
I'm sure that every industry and every business will do everything it can to protect its profits, but my job is to look after the British national interest. What is our national interest? It is not in our national interest to have children who are addicted to social media, can't focus at university, get depressed, get anxious, and then go straight onto welfare because they can't cope. There's evidence now that shows very relation between social media use and increases in mental health problems. That is our first priority, not how much money US tech companies need to make.
So would a future Conservative government then be willing to stand up against the likes of Elon Musk and X and all the other big platforms?
It's about standing up for us. That's the key thing. It's not about attacking social media companies. You know, we think that they do very interesting things. We want to see innovation. You know, we believe in technology. I'm a tech optimist. But we have to look after our kids first. They come first. They are the first priority. And there are ways that we can do this. This is not just about free speech. Free speech is for adults. Freedom is for adults. Freedom is not for children. And people who pretend that freedom should be for little babies and 11-year-olds who haven't quite figured out how the world works are not paying attention. A lot of the people who criticize the policy don't even think about the difference between what a 5-year-old can and can't do and how a parent looks after a 5-year-old versus what you do with a 13-year-old. So what I'm trying to do is bring back some common sense.
Can I say, you've been very clear in the past, Mrs. Badenoch, you've backed the farmers, you've been on many of the farmer protests recently, Parliament Square and other places. Today, for the first time, the farmers are deliberately disrupting the food chain by picketing major centres that supply supermarkets. Do you support that? Because that's a significant ramping up of their industrial action, and they say it's because the supermarkets give them no choice because they've squeezed them and squeezed them so much.
So I think that farmers have a legitimate criticism of supermarkets. It is very difficult for farmers. Many of them are leaving farming because it's just too hard. I think the best way to solve this is to have more pragmatic solutions. I don't think picketing actually works. I think that the supermarkets will continue to do what they do and may even dig their heels in if they feel that the action is becoming violent. What we need to do is make sure that we can get farmers around the table with the supermarkets. Government should help arbitrate and mediate. There's a better way to do this. There's a much better way to do this. But my priority is to take the burdens off farmers. Their lives would be easier if we didn't keep putting more hassle on them. More taxes, more regulation, interfering with their businesses, making it hard for them to farm. That's one big thing that the government can do to make their lives a lot better.
And just finally, until the 1960s, apparently we have to end it there. But Kemi Badenoch, thank you so much for joining us this morning.
Great to talk to you. We ran out of time, I'm afraid. So up next, we were going to ask her about price controls. We'll ask her that next time. Now, up next, the Metropolitan Police are boasting about the lowest homicide rate in London in 11 years. 97 people were killed last year. Why are they so wretchedly complacent? I think it's a scandal that they're boasting about this, don't you?
Well, if they brought the numbers down, I think that's a good thing. But still, it's 97 too many, of course.
Killed.
Anyway, we've got to go. But if you want some holiday sun, here's where to go for it.
I forecast a perfect holiday in the sun.
Weather looking good then?
For sure, and no worries about our travel insurance.
All Clear Travel Insurance sponsors GB News Travel Destinations Forecast.
Hello, here's your latest holiday sun forecast brought to you by the Met Office. On Tuesday, we'll see some unsettled weather across the western Med with some snow across the hills further east. So confirmation then of some outbreaks of rain on Tuesday across the Canaries, Madeira, parts of western Spain and Portugal. Mostly fine, as I say, across the central part of the Med there, certainly for Italy, 1 or 2 showers and some bright spells too, but a risk of snow certainly across the hills of Turkey. As for the coming few days, well, things generally quieten down, but we'll see further rain at times across western parts.
All Clear Travel Insurance sponsors GB News Travel Destinations Forecast.
Decisions made in Washington aren't just shaping America, they're shaping Britain too. From migration to global security, from crime to health. Whatever happens in the White House today
will be felt in your town or city tomorrow.
That's why The Late Show is live from Washington, D.C.
Cutting through the politics to show you what it all means for Britain.
The Late Show live every night at midnight.
Only on GB News,
Britain's news channel.
Do you trust what you're being told?
Good, because neither do I.
Those are just facts.
I'm Alex Armstrong, and on my show, we'll expose the spin.
Well, I want to answer that because you didn't let me last time, because you always speak over me.
The broken promises.
To deny that is denying the truth.
And the hypocrisy.
Needs to stop. You think we can allow?
Politics, policy, parliament. Nothing is off limits. No sugarcoating, no fear of offence, just the truth laid bare. Tune in every Saturday and Sunday at 9 p.m. for Alex Armstrong Tonight, only on GB News, Britain's news channel.
Exciting news. Every Friday, my Patrick Christie's Tonight Show is going to have a twist to it. We're welcoming some special guests. You. That's right, on Fridays I'm going to be doing my show in front of a live studio audience, because this show is about you and what you have to say. It's going to be the same big debates, same big topics, same big opinions. But every Friday night at 9 p.m, you are invited to come on down to Patrick Christie's Tonight to be a part of the action. Only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
At GB News, we love to hear from you, our loyal community. So drop us a line at gbnews.com/yoursay. There you can talk to each other and also to the presenters live on air. gbnews.com/yoursay, because GB News is your channel, Britain's news channel.
Hi, I'm Michelle Dewberry, and my show is your opportunity to cut through all the noise and dive in headfirst to some robust debates. Ideas clash.
Situation,
no,
because the failure is
you're deliberately avoiding my point. Nothing's held back.
And if you think this is the end of it, wait for more.
And we do not shy away from the difficult stuff. Sometimes I want to shake people and say, if only you understood. So join me on Jubes & Co weeknights at 6 p.m, only on GB News, Britain's news channel.
Mornings don't have to be tiresome, especially if you have the right company.
Wake up to news as it happens, opinion and debate, and of course, a little bit of entertainment too.
Because when the kettle's on, we're on.
That's Breakfast on GB News, a show worth waking up for.
Every morning from 6 a.m.
Only on the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
We'll spread the news, you spread the word.
What's the time?
10 to 11.
Yeah.
10:50.
It's funny, you always say 10 to 11, I always say 10
I like the analogue version.
Quite right, too.
Also, it's good mental maths, isn't it, to convert the 24-hour clock into an analogue. You know, keeps me awake.
Too. So that's the time. Now, 2 sex offenders and more than 300 people with criminal records, get this, are still on the Metropolitan Police payroll. How?
But the Met Commissioner Sir Mark Rowley told GB News this morning that the force is vigorously tackling standards issues.
The work we've been doing to bear down on standards, we've removed more than 1,500 men and women from the Met in the last 3 years for standards-related issues. That's more than triple the rate before. We're the most vigorous, most serious you could possibly be on these issues. That data is a moment in time. Some of those cases in there will be people who are currently going through vetting systems. Others will be minor offences.
Well, Mr Complacent, it comes after an internal, or Sir Mr Complacent, comes after an internal review by the force found it had lowered staff vetting checks. Who can tell that?
Well, we're now joined by the former police superintendent, Martin Gallagher. Good morning, Mr Gallagher. Thank you so much for joining us. Now, Andrew thinks that Sir Mark Rowley is being complacent. Do you think that's true, or do you think there is an argument that people with perhaps minor offences in their youth, perhaps shoplifting or public order offence when you're 15, should be allowed to serve in the police later on in life?
Good morning. Certainly, I think it's always been the case there's been a small number of individuals with convictions who have served in the police from in their youth. I think we're talking about a few different things here, and amongst the piece with the Met, though, you're talking about people who are recruited with convictions and they're known. You're talking about people who get convictions when they're then in. You've also got the diversity issue that's come out where vetting decisions were overturned. And these are all different matters. In terms of those who've received a conviction when they're in, there's a misconduct procedure that has to be followed there before they can be sacked.
Now, what do you make of the self-congratulatory approach that the Met is taking to the reduction in homicides? Obviously, it's a very, very good news when numbers fall. But how much of that is due to improving medical care for things like stab wounds rather than actually reducing the crime in the first place?
Yeah, I think you have to look at other violence and then reflect on the bettering of medical procedures. Yeah, you can't get away from that. So you can't separate the two, and I wouldn't. The other piece I would certainly be interested in is the number of missing persons, and I would be reassuring myself that there's nothing there that's causing any issue for me in respect of the reporting on homicide figures. So, I'm sure the Met have done that they are confident that their treatment of missing persons is correct and there's nothing being hidden or masked within that. But certainly, coming back to your point, yes, medical procedures and the increase in the survivability as a result of medical interventions has to play a role.
We've still got to make it clear, haven't we, Mr Gallagher, to certain young men, it is not cool to go out with a knife.
Oh, correct, yeah. I mean, yeah, you might get more people surviving, but you're getting people with life-changing injuries. And it's by luck as well as an uptick in medical procedures that these people are surviving. Carrying a knife, it's inviting violence.
It is. Mr Gallagher, I'm so sorry, we're going to have to leave it there. We have run out of time. But former Police Superintendent Martin Gallagher, thank you so much for your thoughts this morning.
We're going to be crossing live to Nigel Farage speaking at a Reform UK press conference. You won't want to miss that. Britain's Newsroom, Britain's favourite morning show on
GB News.
Today, clouds overhead, total zen within. Boxed Solar sponsors the weather on GB News.
Hello, here's your latest weather update from the Met Office for GB News. Conditions look much milder across the UK today than of late, but we do hold on to fairly unsettled weather too. Outbreaks of rain in most areas and fairly blustery, especially towards the northwest of the UK. Here we could well see some gales, if not severe gale force winds, certainly through the morning. Gusts of wind towards the northwest, say up to 70, even 80 miles an hour. Further south, we'll see a bit of brightness to start the day, particularly across the east and northeast of England. But notice these showers towards the southwest, pushing their way northeastwards across England and Wales as we go through the day. And some of those showers merging to give some longer spells of rain too into the afternoon. Much milder than of late, temperatures in the north up to 7 to 9 degrees, peaking at 12 degrees down towards the southeast, that's into the mid-50s in Fahrenheit. As we go towards the end of the day, we do hold on to quite blustery weather across the far north and northwest of Scotland. Further further outbreaks of rain to come here, and still a risk of gales in the most exposed spots. The south and east of Scotland will see some clear spells and a scattering of showers. And across the north of England and Northern Ireland, we'll also see a mixture of clear spells and scattered showers to end the day. Further south, it's mostly fine towards the southwest with lighter winds here, with most of the showers across the southeast of England at this stage. Heading into the evening then and into the overnight period, those winds will start to ease across the far north and northeast of the UK, and it's the central slice of the UK set to see the most unsettled weather. Outbreaks of rain across Northern Ireland, southern Scotland and the north of England. To the southeast of that, mostly dry, fairly cloudy, and a touch of frost forming with some slightly colder air starting to tuck back in there across the northwest of Scotland. As for Tuesday, the air could become cold enough across the far north there to give a little bit of winteriness once again, particularly across the northwest Highlands and across the southern uplands of Scotland. Elsewhere though, it's a mostly cloudy day in store with outbreaks of rain developing on and off through the day, most of that on the fairly light side. And wherever you are, temperatures stay pretty respectable for the time of year, especially away from the far northwest. Here, temperatures around 5 to 7 degrees, but once again peaking at 10, even 11 Celsius down towards the south and southeast.
Today, clouds overhead. Total zen within. Boxed Solar sponsors the weather on GB News.
There's just 3 weeks left to grab your chance to win our biggest cash prize to date. An incredible £85,000 in tax-free cash could be yours. Cash to make 2026 the year of yes. That's yes to holidays, yes to treats, yes to making all of those dreams come true this year. Just make sure you don't miss out. For another chance to win £85,000 cash, text cash to 63225. One entry costs £2.50 plus one standard network rate message. Or text bonus to 63225. 5 entries cost £5 plus one standard network rate message. Go to gbnews.com/win. Entries start at £2.50. Call 0903 686 3232. Calls cost £2.50 plus your network access charge. Or post your name and number to GB18 PO Box 8690 Derby DE1 9TT. UK only. Entrance must be 18 or over. Lines close at 4 p.m. on the 30th of January. Please check the closing time if listening or watching on demand. Good luck.
Decisions made in Washington aren't just shaping America, they're shaping Britain too. From migration to global security, from crime to health. Whatever happens in the White House today
will be felt in your town or city tomorrow.
That's why The Late Show is live from Washington, D.C.
Cutting through the politics to show you what it all means for Britain.
The Late Show live every night at midnight.
Only on GB News,
Britain's news channel.
Bold. They are under no illusion.
Ray.
Are you a human trafficker?
Boundless. I've had enough of the nonsense, and I'm not afraid to say it.
Don't get us on the BBC.
Every weeknight, I tear through the headlines.
The smell of gasoline. Should we be worried about it?
From Westminster madness to cultural war chaos.
What we're going to do now is they are throwing things out the car as we speak.
Get ready, Britain. Here we go. Patrick Christie's tonight, weeknights from 9 p.m. only on GB News, Britain's news channel.
At GB News, we love to hear from you, our loyal community. So drop us a line at gbnews.com/yoursay. There you can talk to each other and also to the presenters live on air. gbnews.com/yoursay, because GB News is your channel, Britain's news channel.
Join me, Nana Akwe, for an informative, interactive news programme with a difference. It's fun.
Oh, no, you didn't say that, Dave.
I'm so surprised.
I think there's an element of truth to that.
Join me from 3 p.m. every weekend, only on GB News, Britain's news channel.
In the GB Newsroom, we bring you the news as it happens.
With our team of dedicated journalists across the UK, we're ready to keep you up to date with what's happening every half an hour, every single day. Bulletins here on GB News, the People's Channel,
Britain's news channel.
Good morning, it's 11 o'clock on Monday the 12th of January, live across the UK, Britain's Newsroom with Andrew Pearce and Miriam Capes.
Well... The Iranian regime has warned that the US, they will retaliate against any attack after more than 500 people are now reported dead as protests in Iran's spirals. Well, this includes a 23-year-old student protester who was shot in the back of the head and buried by the roadside.
We need the government to wake up and realise what effect they're having on our livelihoods before it's too late. We can't carry on for much longer as we are.
After months of mounting pressure, British farmers have snapped and they're taking direct action against the food supply chain, which could threaten the food on your table.
Elsewhere, the Met Police are boasting of their lowest homicide rates in 11 years. 97 people were killed in 2025. Well, that's as it's revealed that 2 sex offenders and 300 people with criminal records are still on the Met's payroll.
The most vigorous, most serious you could possibly be on these issues. That data is a moment in time.
And some of Britain's most senior former military chiefs are sounding the alarm, making a final appeal to stop the government handing over the Chagos Islands to Mauritius. There's a crunch vote in Parliament today.
Andrew, it's interesting to speak to Kemi Badenoch, the Conservative Party and opposition leader, earlier on. Of course, we were talking mostly about social media. The Conservative Party have come out and said that under-16s should not be on those platforms. But we also spoke to her about some farming issues, didn't we?
Yeah, and she says she understands that, that farmers are under huge pressure from the supermarkets, and that the supermarkets and the farmers should get round the table and sort out their differences, because the fact is farmers are being squeezed and squeezed and squeezed, and it's not financially viable.
There's just no way the supermarkets are going to do this voluntarily, though. They want to make profit. I mean, to be fair to the supermarkets, they've also experienced some serious rises in costs with inflation and energy prices over the last few years. But I personally think we should go back to the idea that we had before the 1964, where farmers were allowed to say, we will not allow you to sell our produce for less than a certain price. So that could be, you know, £1 for a pint of milk or whatever it is.
It's a form of price control.
It is a form of price control, but the alternative to that is this over-empowered supermarkets, this oligopoly. That's not free market. Those are not free prices. They are setting the prices, and farmers are losing out.
They really are. As ever, we'd like to know what you think. Send your views, post your comments by visiting
gbnews.com/your say. But first, here's the news with Sam Francis.
Very good morning to you from the newsroom at just after 11 o'clock. Well, the death toll in Iran is climbing, and it is climbing fast as the regime brutally tightens its grip on nationwide protests, now the biggest challenge to the leadership there in years. At least 544 people are known to have died and more than 10,000 arrested in unrest that is now aimed directly at the supreme leader, Ayatollah Ali Khamenei. And the anger isn't staying inside Iran. In Washington, President Donald Trump says Iran does want to negotiate, but has warned he hasn't ruled out military action.
We're watching it very closely. If they start killing people like they have in the past, I think they're going to get hit very hard by the United States.
In London, meanwhile, protests were back outside Iran's embassy again, even tearing down the Iranian flag for a second day running, as pressure is now growing on Sir Keir Starmer to ban Iran's Revolutionary Guard. Metropolitan Police Commissioner Sir Mark Rowley has said that the situation in London amid those protests has left police caught in the middle of what is a very emotional and volatile situation.
We're the people on the street dealing with tension and trying to manage that tension and deal with illegal behaviour. So, for example, there was a protest over the weekend outside a restaurant, and we've made an arrest there, and we're looking to the CPS as whether we can prosecute somebody for in time for racial hatred from that offence. So we'll keep doing those sort of things. We'll keep intervening when people break the law, and trying to find that balance between freedom of speech, which I know is really important to people, and your ability to express your opinion, but also balancing that with not doing it in a way which intimidates or affects the rights of others.
London's murder rate has fallen to its lowest level in more than a decade, according to new figures from the Met Police today. 97 homicides were recorded last year, giving London a lower murder rate than New York, Berlin or Milan. And teenage killings have also dropped to their lowest level since 2012. Police Chief Sir Mark Rowley says targeted operations against gangs and knife carriers are shattering fewer families, calling it, he says, the product of amazing police work. The City Hall and opposition figures are still clashing over whether Londoners actually feel any safer. Tens of thousands of people across Sussex and Kent are starting their week without running water after Kent County Council declared a major incident. South East Water blames Storm Goretti, freezing weather and a power failure at a pumping station, with 14 postcodes still dry. Schools, libraries and even parts of the local hospital have been forced to shut, with bottled water being handed out and tankers sent in to keep essential services running. The government is rolling out sweeping new parental leave rights from April this year after its Employment Rights Act passed into law at the end of last year. Ministers are today confirming that unpaid parental leave will become a day one right, meaning parents won't have to wait months before taking time off. In a major shift also, bereaved partners who lose a partner before their baby's first birthday will now be entitled to a full year of leave to care for their child. Prime Minister Sir Keir Starmer says for too long working people have been left without basic rights, adding that ends now. But the Conservatives warn the changes could hit businesses. Those are the latest headlines. I'll be back with you shortly. Now, though, it's over to Andrew and Miriam.
Take the GB News family with you on any device. As long as you have an internet connection, tune into GB News anywhere on the planet or beyond.
We have some breaking news. Our media regulator Ofcom has launched an investigation into Elon Musk's X to determine whether it's complying with its duties to protect people in the country from content that could be illegal.
Well, the Ofcom has said there have been deeply concerning reports of the Grok AI chatbot account on X being used to create and share undressed images of people which may amount to intimate image abuse or pornography, and sexualised images of children that may amount to child sexual abuse material. That's a statement from Ofcom.
There's no debate about it. I mean, it's being abused, and
it's not just being abused, it's deliberate, because the other AI apps are designed so that you can't ask for images of real people to be so-called nudified. Yeah. That's not a restriction on Grok. That's entirely deliberate by Elon Musk. He's allowed that. And, of course, people are using that to create sexualised images of real-life human beings.
Yeah. Well, everybody, I think most people I know have had it done to them.
Yeah. It's absolutely obscene, and I think the problem is that we have got confused between free speech, which of course is important and a foundation of democratic society, and obscenity, which we have had very strong laws against in this country for centuries. Yeah. And that's just obscene. There's no free speech element in nudifying a picture of a woman and sharing it on X.
We've got our panelling because we're about to go to a Nigel Farage press conference. Former Labour advisor Matthew Talbot and political commentator Claire Muldoon. Claire, what do you make of this? Because this Grok chatbot, I mean, it is revolting.
I don't understand how anyone actually would have had a thought process, one, to make it. And why, again, it's always women and young children who are being abused sexually, you know, in every shape and form without consent. It's ridiculous that this is actually being allowed to happen in 2026. Where are those parameters? Yeah. And I'm glad that Ofcom now has got involved, so hopefully they'll be able to clear it up. And whilst they're clearing it up, they should be clearing up pornography and children's access to it as well. And you teased a story earlier about should 16-year-olds not have any form of social media. I believe that they shouldn't.
Yeah, well, I'm with you on that. Matthew, the fact is Ofcom is our regulator. But if Ofcom went to the dentist say, what you haven't got any teeth. It is a toothless body.
I agree, and that's, yes, this is welcome. It's good to shine a light on it. I think also to maybe try and shape the debate. I posted about this over Christmas, and I've had so much flack. I was astounded because people see
you're against
this.
free speech.
Well, yes, a little bit. And the idea that if Twitter went down tomorrow, there'd be no news and nobody couldn't get any news. That was the next thing and all the rest of it. And, well, this happens elsewhere. I think places like the Centre for Social Justice have done research into the fact that not only can you do this sort of stuff, when you talk to Grok, as many young people may or may not do, and we're going down this weird path of people having conversations and it's like back in the day you'd have an invisible imaginary friend. Now you have social media or whatever that you can speak to, or AI. It will offer prompts, and you can ask Grok. There's been a lot of stuff said about the fact that you can do this stuff on other AI. Grok gives you prompts in things like spicy mode, they call it. It's totally inappropriate.
I think it's repulsive.
Now, thank you both to our panel. We'll be back to you in a minute.
Because Nigel Farage is about to unveil his latest press conference, Reform UK press conference, but we're going to talk to Chris Hope first, or we're going straight to Nigel?
I am quite a good friend of Reza Pahlavi. Quite what the final settlement would be in Iran if this revolution succeeds, I don't know, but I do believe him to be a positive and helpful influence. It is obviously tragic that so many people have been killed over the last few days, wholly unsurprising. And perhaps a lot of the silence we get from our establishment is, of course, because they all backed the JCPOA deal back in 2015, which I was vehemently opposed to, which frankly has done nothing more than prolong the life of this absolutely monstrous regime. Also, quickly want to touch on our friends in Brussels and the Farage clause. You would have to be a prime minister that had no feeling, no understanding of something called the national interest, to sign up to something for which we could be punished if a subsequent elected government took a different view. But then given what this Prime Minister has done on the Chagos Islands and much else, I don't think national interest really comes into his vocabulary. Far more worried about what globalist institutions may think of him. Now, today we are announcing a very senior political figure and business figure who is joining our team. I know that the sketch writers will go on saying that we're a one-man band. It doesn't matter how many women we get elected. It doesn't matter how many senior figures from all walks of life join us. For some reason, the one-man band narrative seems to have stuck, but it's nonsense, I promise you. So before I introduce our guest for today, our new defector today, I'm going to show you a short video about who he is.
Born in Baghdad, my memoirs are called The Boy from Baghdad. We came to these shores.
With a TV.
Oh, we might be about...
We've now got a blank screen with a bit of Reform's logo. We might get Mr Farage back on. He will not be happy about this because he's supposed to be unveiling a very...
I wonder if it is like on the X Factor where they say, and the person to be eliminated is, and then you have to wait 20 seconds to find out. We do know it's a business person.
They did say, he did say him.
Oh, we know it's a man.
Yeah.
It's like a game of Guess Who.
Yeah.
Who could it be? Ah, here we go. We're going back to the video.
We came to these shores in 1979. I was 11 years old. We came with nothing other than hope and determination, but also knowing that this nation was the most civilized nation on earth. But my friends, today, Britain's broken, and I'm convinced that Britain needs reform. Nothing works. There is no growth. There is crime on our streets, and there is an avalanche of illegal migration that in anywhere else in the world would be a national emergency. Nigel recognises it's a national emergency, and I think in many ways we need to act in the same way as we did in delivering the vaccine programme. This room, this table, became my office during the pandemic, and I broadcast to the nation. These curtains behind me became quite famous on social media because I literally had to go on almost nightly just to reassure the nation that we had the team, we had the focus, and that we will deliver. I founded what I think is one of the greatest information businesses in the world, in YouGov. We all have to, at some stage, look in the mirror and decide what's best for our country. And I've gone from Councillor to Chancellor of the Exchequer to make this move, but I'm convinced it's the right move. Why? Because I think Britain is drinking in the last chance saloon, and it really does need Nigel Farage as Prime Minister. And the one thing that I've been impressed by with Nigel is I've seen politicians come and go, and some are motivated and driven by just getting to the seat of power, get to number 10. That is not Nigel. I have seen him operate with world leaders. When he needs to push back, he pushes back, he listens to allies and works with them, and has that gravitas and respect. And I've made my mind up that the team that will deliver for this nation will be the team that Nigel will put together. And that's why I've decided that I'm joining Reform.
Thank you for having me. So that's Nadine Zahawi on the platform there with Nigel Farage. He was very briefly and he's now...
Good morning, everyone. I'm here today to tell you all, and of course the British people, that Britain needs reform. Britain needs Nigel Farage as Prime Minister. I know this may come as a surprise to my old party and to many Westminster watchers, but it really shouldn't. And it certainly won't come as a shock to the tens of millions of hard-working, patriotic, decent people up and down our wonderful United Kingdom, from the Highlands of Scotland to the bottom of Cornwall, from rural Wales to the beating heart of London. We can all see that our beautiful, ancient, kind, magical island story has reached a dark and dangerous chapter. Things may feel like they're ticking along just fine within a few square miles of where we stand today. But in so much of the rest of the country, the sickness is no surprise to anyone. To anyone trying to get a doctor's appointment, to anyone who wants to express an opinion, whether on X or even just down the pub, to anyone who wants their children to be taught facts, not harmful fictions at school, to anyone just trying to earn a living and not get crushed into the dirt by ever-growing taxes. Even if you don't yet realise that Britain needs reform, you know in your heart of hearts that our wonderful country is sick. How many of you at home have thought to yourselves that nothing works today? I know I have, and I have it a damn sight easier than most people. That is why I'm standing here today as the newest member of Reform UK. I could very easily spend the rest of my life back in business, which I've been enjoying since leaving Parliament 18 months ago. Many will know that I have done some, from the beginning of the most difficult period in government, that I've gone from being probably the most popular politician because of the vaccine programme in the country, with many in this room writing lovely things about me, to someone who had the same journalist camped outside their house and write some very painful things. And I expect there will be some who want to obviously go over those issues when I sit down. And of course, I have always supported the right of a free press. But my point is that I could choose a quiet, comfortable retirement out of the headlines, chairing one of Britain's biggest online retailers, helping out the Adam Smith Institute, and of course investing heavily both here in the UK and internationally. But I also know a thing or two about growing up in a country that is fundamentally broken, riven by sectarian strife, economic depression, and cratering living standards. So I have decided not to stand by and watch that happen to the country that took me in and let me live my British dream. Not when so many of my countrymen are instead living the waking nightmare of Keir Starmer's two-tier Britain. So I stand here with the leader of my new party, to offer my help and my insights to the dynamic, confident team that Nigel Farage is building, and to urge others from across all the other parties and the many millions who until now felt that politics isn't for them, to come and join us. Come and join us. You know Britain is broken. You know it needs reform. Since leaving Parliament, I have been reflecting on the successes and failures of my old party's time in government. I now rue the timidity, even at times the weakness, with which we try to deal with the problems of the country. My analysis is that a huge culprit is the overmighty bureaucratic inertia that now dominates and runs the country, that has taken control of swathes of the economy, and with barely a shrug of the shoulders, restricted the individual liberty of each and every one of us. And we believed them. Now, I have always been the first to defend the civil servants who served me across multiple departments, and I will always do that. Individually, they are some of the most dedicated, talented, and capable people I've ever had the privilege to work with. But taken as a whole, we have an administrative state, including the over-powerful regulators, the quangos, and all the other agencies who have had power pushed onto them by successive parliaments and governments. These parliaments have been full of politicians terrified of the awesome power and the sacred responsibility that the British Constitution bestowed upon our ancient and sovereign parliament. This has meant that we have ignored the words of John 9:4, to work the work of the day while we can, because the night is certainly coming. So it is time for another glorious revolution to get us back to a fully sovereign parliament, and where the government really is the government. For that, my friends, Britain needs reform. My old party, and by definition, to some extent, me personally, should share some blame for the continuation of the Blairite constitutional vandalism and our failure, to coin a phrase, to take back control from the entrenched powers of the unelected bureaucracy. Now, Conservatives did some important work, stabilising the economy in the early years after Tony Blair's and Gordon Brown's destructive reign, reforming education and welfare, supporting Ukraine, and of course dealing with the pandemic as well as we could. But failures on mass migration, failure to strengthen our armed forces or even protect special forces from insane government lawyers, and bad virtue-signalling legislation that has made us less competitive and less prosperous, to name but a few. These have provided me with painful lessons learnt that I will, I hope, benefit this great new team. One other lesson I have learnt from ruminating on my time in government is this: we should have been much more forthright about what we really think. I came into politics from a business background where straight talking was what you did. I probably picked up too much of the bizarre politician speak of trying to talk around an issue rather than tackle it head on. So I'm going to be open about my real unvarnished fears for the country, because what has happened in the last 18 months has terrified me. We have a Prime Minister whose first instinct is to trust foreign judges over British people. We have an Attorney General who says he would never block the ECHR, even presumably when it forces us to take back Shamima Begum and prevent us from deporting foreign child rapists. We have a Chancellor who does not understand economic growth, and a parliamentary Labour Party who, through their lack of engagement with the real world, or even seemingly living in it, actively despise the capitalist activity that to many millions of us is human, moral, creative, and dynamic. We have an energy secretary who couldn't be doing more damage to our living standards and our economy if he was actively trying to hurt us. We have an education secretary who has thrown out 20 years of political consensus on education policy, one that has made English schools the best in the whole Western world, sacrificing your child's future on the altar of her slavish devotion to the trade unions and her ambition to winning their support, of course, at the upcoming Labour leadership election. We have a Justice Secretary who once said that Brexiteers like me were worse than Nazis, and who's throwing out an ancient liberty of this land in the form of jury trials, all whilst locking up people on Twitter. We have a Foreign Secretary giving away sovereign British territory, just as the world gets more dangerous and we are menaced by, first amongst others, a Russia that cares not a jot for words, it only respects strength. We have a Health Secretary who's ploughing ahead with giving children life-destroying hormone blockers, even though we know conclusively now know the damage that they do. And of course, worse, as calamitous as this shower of a government is, there are radical Islamists waiting in the wings to supplant half the cabinet at the next general election and enter Parliament. Is there not still a teacher in hiding in Batley? Is there not an attempt by the CPS to introduce blasphemy laws via the back door? Just last week, did we not learn that a police force whose response to uncovering a plot by a group of Muslims in the West Midlands to organise into an armed militia and commit pogrom against Jewish football fans was to lie to the public and to blame the Jews? This is a sickness deep in the heart of our country that for 40 years we have let fester. We should have nipped political Islam in Britain in the bud the moment there were protests against an author for the crime of writing a book. Some of the biggest victims of these Muslim Brotherhood fanatics may be the millions of moderate, decent, patriotic British Muslims. And they may be, as we have seen, Britain's Jewish community too. But my friends, make no mistake, the rest of the country are every bit as much in their sights too. And the only political leader who has spoken up about this at great personal threat, who has pledged to ban the Muslim Brotherhood and the whole sinister fifth column in Britain, Nigel Farage, the man sitting by me now. I am inspired by his willingness to say difficult truths rather than hide behind a comfortable lie. I'm inspired by the fact that he and his team understand the radical changes required on our economy to save us from the impending debt trap. I'm inspired by their understanding that we need a foreign policy, one that ruthlessly seeks the British national interest. I'm inspired by their concern over the broiling social tensions out there in the country, and in my view, the undervalued risk of sustained civil unrest if we don't get back on track. In short, ladies and gentlemen, I'm inspired by reform. Our best days can lie ahead, they really can, and we can move into a glorious future. But at the moment, Britain is broken. Britain needs reform. I have joined this movement to put my shoulder to the wheel to help it. I encourage others to join us too. Thank you very much indeed.
So that's Nadeem Zahawi. Now, he was Chancellor of the Exchequer, not for very long, Miriam.
Thank you, and welcome on board.
Days or
right, we have the usual list of questions, beginning with Ian Watson from the BBC.
Thank you. First question to,
asked by journalists in the room. We can't hear the question, unfortunately, but Farage is about to answer. He does have a microphone. We will be able to
you
hear
were sacked as Conservative Party chair for your tax affairs and what you said about your tax affairs. Do you really provide the right image for a party that's meant to be anti-establishment? And to Nigel, I can ask you as well. Today, on substance, today the Labour Party is introducing necessary legislation to give people parental rights from day one in the job. Is that something you would reverse if you came to power? And on another topic today, Ofcom in the past 20 minutes has announced that it is investigating Grok X. Do you welcome that investigation?
Thank you, Ian. I wrote a book about my time in government and about my final chapter, my departing government as chairman of the party. I built a great business in YouGov, and at some stage HMRC decided that I needed to pay more tax on that business, which I did. I had a choice, of course, by the way, which is to instruct my accountants to challenge HMRC, but of course they were reporting into me as Chancellor, and that's why I decided actually the appropriate thing to do was to settle. The mistake I made is not to be specific about the settlement in my declarations to the Cabinet Office, and I deal with that in detail in my book. And I absolutely think that politicians should be held to a higher level of accountability, but I shouldn't be precluded from doing the right thing via my country, and I think I've got a set of talents and experiences that I can lend the team that Nigel's building to be able to get this country back on track.
Yeah, it's the big difference really between here and America. And by the way, America's growing at 4.3%. That was the last figure we saw, and we're not growing at all. And in America, we accept that people have companies that fail. In fact, most successful Americans boast about how many failures they've had. And I saw Layla Cunningham being attacked by the media because a couple of her investments in firms hadn't worked. So what? You know, that's what it's all about. She risked her money. Some you win, some you lose. And there's nobody with a complex business empire that does not have to have negotiations at some point with HMRC. That is how the world works. And I'd much rather have Nadeem, who's been through that experience and come out the other end. And he could have just gone abroad. He could have just disappeared for a few years and not paid any tax, which, by the way, increasingly is what people are doing. So, yeah, you know, we've got a very, very broad range of people in this party, but I'm pleased to say we've got several people in the upper echelons of reform who've been successful in business, unlike the government, where not one of them has. I'm all for parental rights. It's just all about what that balance and relationship is with employers. And I think, you know, what we've seen with the employment rights legislation thus far in this government is employer after employer saying, we will take on fewer people. And the rapid rise of youth unemployment, I think, bears testament to that already. On Grok, I mean, nothing from the current set of regulators and government would surprise me when it comes to the suppression of free speech. Do we like and welcome the particular feature on Grok that's made the news over the weekend? No, but let's talk to Grok. They've already made one or two steps in our direction. My fear is we'll end up suppressing Grok and further suppressing free speech, and we do not want to do that. Catherine Forster, GB News.
Thank you, Catherine Forster, GB News. Nadine Tahari, a few years ago you tweeted, "I'm not British-born, Mr. Nigel Farage. I am as British as you are. Your comments are offensive and racist. I would be frightened to live in a country run by you." Why the change of heart? And this was 2015.
Oh, quite recent then, thank you. Yeah.
Well, just asking about the change of heart. And also on Iran, Mr. Farage, would you support Britain potentially supporting US military involvement in Iran, and also us possibly prescribing the IRGC? Thank you.
We should have prescribed the IRGC years ago, just as we should have prescribed the Muslim Brotherhood years ago, and I've been saying those things clearly and consistently for many, many years, and I've reiterated them in recent times. I cannot believe the stupidity of Obama, the European Union, the British Foreign Office, and some of your former colleagues who went along in 2015 with this JCPOA deal. It's been a disaster. It's freed up tens of billions of dollars for the Iranians. And what have they used it for? They've used it to fund the Houthis, Hezbollah, Hamas. These are massive self-inflicted wounds, and so I've always felt vehemently opposed to this. We went for regime change against Saddam. We went for regime change against Gaddafi. The regime change we've always needed is in Iran. where the wonderful Persian people, with all their amazing talents, have been kept in this theocratic, brutal regime. I very much hope President Trump acts in the next few days. We don't know how many have been killed. It could be perhaps as many as 2,000, I'm told, before coming to this press conference. So would I support military action against the IRGC, the Revolutionary Guard, on the ground in Iran, so that the good guys can win this revolution? Absolutely, 100%.
Catherine, good on you for digging out a tweet from 11 years ago. But all I would say to you is if I thought this man sitting next to me was in any way had an issue with people of my colour or my background who have come to this country, who have integrated, assimilated, proud of this country, worked hard for this country, paid millions of pounds in taxes in this country, invested in the country, I wouldn't be sitting next to him. And I think he wouldn't be sitting next to me either.
Quite. Rob Powell from Sky News.
Thank you, Rob Powell, Sky News. Mr Zahawi, as a former vaccines minister, how do you feel about Reform giving a platform to a vaccine conspiracy theorist at their conference this year?
We believe in free speech. We gave a platform to somebody.
I was asking Mr Zahawi.
Who has nothing to do with that. Well, he wouldn't know the answer to this, would he?
Like, he can
He
give
wouldn't
me his
know the
feelings
answer.
on it,
There's
though,
no
can't he?
reason why he should. The gentleman that spoke is part, indirectly, of the American administration and gave an opinion.
OK. Well, if Mr Zahawi wanted to answer that, and also tell me, what would you say to colleagues that you worked with in the Conservative government during the pandemic who might feel a little betrayed today? And Mr Farage, if I may as well, in 2022, when Nadeem Zahawi was appointed Chancellor, you said, I thought Zahawi had principles, but tonight we learned all he's interested in is climbing that greasy pole. Are you now greasing that pole for your new colleague?
If you look at the clip, you will see that I profess to be a fan.
You did?
Of the I very publicly said I'm a big supporter of this guy. And I actually, there was a period of time when I thought, perhaps, if he became the leader of the Conservative Party, things might start to look a little different. So I was a fan, openly, publicly professed fan. I was disappointed that he decided to join what I saw as a failing government at that moment in time. But I've always been a fan of his.
Rob, I think you walked into that one. But thank you, Nigel, and thank you for the compliment. Look, ultimately, I reiterate again, I wouldn't be sitting next to Nigel if he thought that what we did on vaccine was in some way a failure. Quite the opposite. He's always said to me that what we were able to do was to harness the best of Britain, both from outside the civil service and from the civil service. We had Brigadier Phil Prosser, the great of our military, the great Emily Lawson, who came out from outside government to come and help into government, was something that he admired. But I have to say to you, and Nigel just gave the details, rightly so, because I wouldn't have known the details about their party conference. I have to say to you, I prefer a party conference and a party that is open and believes in free speech and allows their members, their candidates, to debate openly and to actually have substantive disagreement but come together and then move forward with a strategy, real clear strategy, than parties that don't allow that in the way the Labour Party is behaving and they behave at their party conference.
Maybe worth, talking of vaccine rollout, remembering, maybe the Prime Minister's watching, we were only able to do what we did in the speed that we did it because we were not members of the European Union and all the associated medical bodies. All right? And that all seems to have been forgotten. We had the freedom to move and to act. And what Nadeem proved during that is this bloke gets stuff done. And if we head on and win the next general election, we're going to have a lot of stuff to do, including him. Thank you. Shihab Khan, ITV.
Shihab Khan, ITV News. Nadeem Zahawi, you were a Conservative councillor, you became Chancellor and you've now defected to Reform UK. You had previously said that you would be uncomfortable living in a country that was led by Nigel Farage. Given your dynamic, moving opinions, how can we trust a word that you say now? And Nigel Farage, a question for you. There's been a lot of talk about social media being banned for those under the age of 16. Is that something that you would be supportive of?
Good question. Go on.
Shihab, look, I'm going to sound like a broken record. I wouldn't be sitting here if I thought that Nigel Farage wasn't someone capable of leading the country, of becoming Prime Minister. And I'm sitting here because I have observed Nigel Farage in work, in operation, with world leaders, where not only was I impressed, but also watched him push back when he needed to. None of the sycophancy that you see from the current Prime Minister with the way he's behaving internationally. Chagos Islands comes to mind on that one. And that's why I'm sitting here. The nation will make up its own mind. I could easily, as you heard me say in my speech and Nigel repeated, just sit at home and do nothing. I think the country is facing a national emergency on the economy, on our open borders, on what is happening in parts of the country, which I genuinely worry about, that could actually tip over into civil unrest. And I could just walk away, but I chose not to, and that's why I'm here.
I 100% support the ban on smartphones in school. 100% support it. Yeah, leave them in a locker as you go into the school, maybe take them out lunchtime break, I don't know, but I 100% support that. When it comes to banning things, I'm not very keen generally on banning things. My answer would be, let's see where Australia is in 6 months' time. Let's see whether this actually works. Now look, we have laws, of course, about what age you can start drinking. I mean, do those laws actually stop people drinking under 18? I'm not sure they do. I would say, let's see the Australian experiment, let's see how it works, and then make our minds up. Thank you very much. Martina Bett from The Sun.
Thank you very much. Martina Bett from The Sun. Given a lot of attention has been paid to social media and youngsters, I would like to know if you thought that worklessness among young people, mental health crisis and social media are linked. And if so, given you're against a social media ban for under 16s, what would you propose to do to tackle it?
I didn't say I was against it. I said there's an experiment that's been started by the Australians, and let's see whether it works or not. I mean, I think that's a perfectly reasonable position to come in. Look, worklessness amongst young people is terrible, it's awful. Too many of them are being told they're victims. We have ADHD diagnoses that are, frankly, multiple times what they ought to be. And I do genuinely think if you tell a kid at 16, 17 they're a victim, they may well stay with that mentality through the rest of their lives. And my colleague Richard Tice has done some terrific work on Send, where he says the odd thing is huge numbers of people are getting put on these programs that shouldn't, and those that really need the help aren't frankly getting what they need. So there's a lot of thinking to do. Frankly, this government, everything this government has done has added to worklessness for youth. Particularly cruel was dropping to £5,000, the level at which employers have to start paying national insurance. And yeah, great, to put up minimum wage for youngsters by 20% sounds wonderful, but you add the cost of that, you add the cost of NI, you add the cost of everything else in a business, and there are many tens of thousands fewer people out of work, young people out of work now than there were this time last year. And my feeling, and I could be wrong, this is purely a guess from going around the country, but I don't think I can ever recall out in the provinces such a mood of negativity amongst Britain's small and medium-sized businesses. And I suspect you're going to see some shocking results from the British economy over the course of 2026, all of, part of which why I think the general election will come much earlier than 2029. Martin Beckford from the Mail.
Thank you. First of all, Mr. Zahawi, have you been promised any specific role with reform, either in opposition or in government, and will you stand as an MP again? And to Mr. Farage, are you still not worried that voters will see these increasing numbers of former Tory ministers and say there's no difference between you and them? Thank you.
Thanks, Martin. No promises at all. I was a foot soldier in the Conservative Party. I am now a foot soldier in Reform UK because I genuinely believe the country cannot afford a decade of Labour government, and the only real hope for us of removing this government is to get behind Nigel Farage and his team.
What's the difference between us? I spent a quarter of a century campaigning for us to leave the European Union. I had to fight the Conservative Party tooth and nail all the way through, apart from a few individuals who were able to break cover once the referendum hove into view. I have, since 2004, been against the mass expansion of the European Union to 8, then 10 former communist countries, because I realised, whilst we get some great people, frankly, the population surge would put pressure on housing, pressure on public services. You know, I advocated leaving the ECHR in 2020 from the middle of the Channel in Dover, saying unless we do, this trickle will become, well, I used the word invasion, which I got in terrible trouble for, but 190,000 people later, it's tough to think that I wasn't actually right. Net zero. Richard and I have campaigned against net zero for goodness knows how long. They put it into law. So the differences are enormous. And when people like Nadeem come to us and say, look, you know, we did one or two good things, but hands up, we got a lot wrong. And frankly, for the Boris wave, and for that breach of trust with those that voted Brexit and then lent their votes to the Conservative Party in 2019, that is a betrayal of trust that should never, ever be forgiven. So no, we are not going to become the Conservative Party 2.0, but our weakness is we lack front-line experience. I've always been very candid about that, and with people like Nadeem, they've been on the inside, you know, they know how government works, or perhaps more accurately, how government doesn't work. So we welcome his experience very much indeed. Thank you. Christian Cowgie, Express.
It's a nice surprise. Nadeem, one of your other jobs, of course, was in the Cabinet Office. So I wonder if you're going to be helping specifically your other former defector, Mr. Kruger, with the preparations for that, and whether you have any thoughts on some of the more minutiae elements of how to dismantle the disruptive and overbearing civil service.
Thank you, Christian. And I hope some of my experience and my input is to really work with Danny and his team on this. Why do I say that? Because I saw the best and the worst during the pandemic. So when I was appointed as the Vaccine Deployment Minister, I said to the then Prime Minister that I will only take the job on if I could speak with his authority. His response was to ask, what does that mean? I said, what it means, I've got to be able to access you in minutes and seconds and minutes rather than in hours and days. And we had to do that because if I didn't have that capability, I would have never been able to deliver just shy of 1 million doses a day from a standing start, no infrastructure whatsoever. The best was having people like Phil Prosser, Brigadier Phil Prosser, embedded into the NHS and his team, because he was in charge of supplying our brave men and women on the front line. And there is no excuse. You can't be, half an hour late when you have to deliver bullets and life-saving equipment to the front line of our military. Emily Lawson, who came from outside of government to actually fix things inside the NHS and then take on this role. Ruth Todd, who we pulled out of the Ministry of Defence. She was in charge of the supply chain for our nuclear submarine. I can tell you, all the manufacturers were frightened of Ruth more than anybody else, any minister or anyone else. It's putting that sort of team together. The difficulty is what I said in my speech, is you get the shrug of the shoulders and saying, it's too complicated, too complex, and we can't really do much about it. And ministers don't have the experience and the confidence to be able to say, no, let's sit down, I want to see the evidence. What I just heard from Nigel fills me with even more confidence when he answered the question about the 16-year-old and ban on social media. Let's see the evidence from Australia. Evidence-based strategy in business or in politics tends to deliver better outcomes, success, right? When we move away from that and start playing politics and start playing, oh, well, Minister, you can make an announcement tomorrow, but it's just an announcement to sort of get you out of the way, then things go wrong.
One of the other jobs, of course, that Nadeem did for the Conservative Party was to be the chairman of it and to raise a huge amount of money. And we're hoping he'll do much the same for us, amongst other things. Sorry about the pressure, but there we are. Tony Diver from The Telegraph.
Hello, Tony Diver from The Telegraph. Mrs. Zahawi, on this point about COVID vaccines, I hear the point about free speech, but the doctor previously mentioned told Reform's conference that the vaccines that you rolled out may have caused the King's cancer. And he was described by David Bull as someone who worked with him to write Reform's health policy. So do you reject those views? And if they have shaped Reform's health policy, will you try to change it?
I think you'll find David Bull actually spoke about vaccines on Friday night at our event that we held down at the Excel Centre with just shy of 3,000 people launching our London campaign. And I think you'll find, if you look at what Dr. David Bull, our chairman, said, how proud he was of the work, actually for centuries, that London had done and led the way in with vaccines. And as Nadeem said previously, you know, we get all sorts of speakers from all over the world, some of whom have different opinions.
Can I just come in, Tony?
Please.
I expected more from you, right? That was a really stupid question, right? And it doesn't even deserve an answer. So try again next time.
Right, Dan Bloom, Politico. I'm the nice guy here, you know, I mean...
Thank you, Dan Bloom from Politico. Mr. Farage, I heard what you said there on Iran. More generally, when it comes to sort of Donald Trump's worldview, he's obviously, you know, in some ways becoming the sort of interventionist president overseas. Do you feel that him being the sort of the world's commander-in-chief more generally is not a thing that you would agree with? And Mr. Zahawi, I will try one more time with a stupid question. Did you seek any assurances from Mr. Farage or anyone else about Reform's policy on vaccines before you joined?
Right, let me take that again. I still think it's a stupid question, and I'll tell you for why. I know you want to persist on this because you just heard from the leader of the Reform Party that David Bull spoke about this and was very clear on this. And you're still going on about, you know, were vaccines efficacious or not. I would not be sitting here, nor would Nigel be sitting next to me, if we didn't agree that we did the right thing for the nation to get the vaccine program to the success that it achieved, the fastest vaccine rollout in Europe, if not in the world. And so that is why I think it's a stupid question.
Okay, if Donald Trump is knocking out the brutal leaders of Venezuela, and let's hope Iran, and thereby taking away the greatest allies that the Chinese Communist Party and an increasingly dangerous-looking Vladimir Putin, if that's what Trump is doing, I would argue very strongly he's doing the world a favour. Thank you very much indeed. Let's go to Tim Stanley, Daily T.
Tim Stanley, Daily T. Are you a one-man band? Joke!
Clearly,
joke!
Clearly.
Right. You're clearly not. There's a lot of people in this band, I can see that. A Conservative spokesman has just said, Reform is fast becoming the party of has-been politicians looking for their next gravy train. So my first question, Nadeem, are you a has-been politician? And Nigel, is there any Tory politician you won't take? What is your bar? How do you decide who to say yes to and who to say no to? And have you ever said no?
No, that is a very good question. Have we said no to people? Yes, we have. Yes, we. Well, no, I'm not going to tell you that, am I? For goodness' sake. I mean, that's an even more stupid question. Look, we want people who believe in what we're doing, and the reason I was a fan of this guy, and rather hoped he would become the leader of the Conservative Party, is I could see, you know, on some of the really tough issues facing this country that others would rather simply brush under the carpet, like extremism, as you mentioned in your speech earlier, that this was a guy that had the conviction and that actually wanted to do it. So, you know, before the next question comes, yes, there are plenty of people in the Conservative Party currently talking to me, and some might fit and some really might not fit. But they all can see that May the 7th is an absolutely pivotal moment, after which there is a strong chance that the Conservative Party, after its couple of hundred years, will cease to be a national political party, hence all the conversations that are going on.
Tim, whoever the spokesman for my old party, I hope they'll ask the leader if I'm a has-been politician when she and her team came to me not too long ago without betraying confidences for my advice on how the party should move forward. So I think that speaks volumes for my ability. As I said earlier in my speech, I could just sit at home and enjoy my life, but I've decided to come forward and be a foot soldier for Reform UK, because I think it's our last chance to really get this country back on its feet.
Maybe we should return the compliment to whoever gave you that statement and say you're and never will be, which strikes me as being perhaps the right way of looking at it. I'm so enjoying this now. Right, David Lynch from PA.
Hello. Hi, Ms. Farage, David Lynch from PA. Yeah, just wanted to ask you about something that appeared in the Sunday Times over the weekend. There was reporting in that newspaper citing a source close to the Trump administration saying that Trump has totally lost faith with Farage and doesn't believe he is for real. Are you for real?
Oh, I'm for real. Don't worry about that. As far as Trump losing faith in me, I don't know. I mean, I saw him in October. I sat with him in November at Mar-a-Lago and chatted about a few things. He's always been enormously supportive of me. I'm supportive of him. We don't see eye to eye on every issue. And as Nadeem says, if I don't see eye to eye, I tell him I don't see eye to eye. I'm not frightened of saying to people what I think. Do you know what? Sometimes journalists write things that may not necessarily be wholly true. Natasha Clark, LBC. It is quite fun, isn't it? Here we go.
Thank you, Nigel. Thank you, Mr. Zahawi. Mr. Zahawi, you are someone that supported Boris Johnson, famously, and 36 hours later called for him to go. Mr. Farage, are you sure that you can trust this man? If you can, are you prepared to give him a job in reform, preparing for a reform government, fundraising, health policy, perhaps? And Nadeem, your former Tory colleagues, of course, will be looking to you today. They have said, just in the last few minutes, you have shown the level of loyalty for sale. Can I just ask you, why do you think that Kemi Badenoch doesn't have what it takes to become Prime Minister and Nigel does? Thank you.
Thanks, Natasha. Boris Johnson decided to keep me on as Chancellor after his resignation. I think I've seen at close contact some of the pitfalls and the mistakes that Prime Ministers have made. And like Nigel, I'm not frightened of saying to my colleagues that we're making a mistake. And I hope it's something that, a value that Nigel identifies with. What was your second question?
Why do you not think that Kemi Badenoch has it?
Well, if nothing else, she's got the baggage of what I think is a defunct brand, a brand that the nation has decided they can no longer trust. And of course, I don't think, in my view, she's able to form the next government. And ultimately, if you put country ahead of party, you come to the same conclusion, that the only person that you can really get behind and put the work and the energy into is Nigel Farage and his team.
And yes, he will be doing a big job for us, and all of that will be announced in the weeks to come. As for loyalty, well, if he's disloyal, you'll find that we deal with things very much more effectively in Reform UK. I do mean it, actually, but I don't see it being an issue, honestly, I don't. And that's the only thing I ever asked for. The only thing I ever asked for as leader, in all the years I've done politics, the only thing I ask for is loyalty. If you want to disagree with me, you want to shout at me, you want to throw things at me, I really, really, really don't mind. But we do it behind closed doors. And it was so interesting at our conference up in Birmingham that we had the founder of Reform Canada, Carl, and they went all the way from a tiny fringe party way out west in Canada to being the biggest party in Canadian politics, to Stephen Harper becoming the Prime Minister for 10 years. And that was the one thing that Preston Manning told us, is we had our arguments in private. And that's all I ask of anybody that comes. And we will have our disagreements. We won't see eye to eye on everything. No two human beings can. But they're the rules within this organisation. It's very, very straightforward. Lucy White from Bloomberg.
Hi, Nigel. Can I ask you again on Grok? You mentioned that yourself and President Trump have disagreed on things in the past. Do you think that President Trump is right to consider sanctioning UK officials at Ofcom for taking action against child pornography on Grok? And Nadeem, can I ask you as well, as a former businessman yourself, do you think that Reform's policy, or Reform currently has enough policy on international trade and foreign policy? I've heard from businesses myself that they're not clear on what that Reform policy might be. And in terms of importing and exporting in particular, do you have any ideas that you will be sharing with the party?
Thank you, Lucy. Can I just touch upon, I know Nigel will come back on this, on the whole issue of Grok. What happened with Grok, by the way, you could do on PowerPoint, right? Anyone who chooses to want to create an image, you could have done in the past. So technology is moving fast. What you don't do, in my view, is take a heavy-handed approach and start banning stuff, right? What Nigel said is absolutely spot on. Elon Musk is one of the great businessmen of our generation, and he's rightly come out and said, we will fix this, and the fix is to make sure that people who are registered, who you know who their identity is, can use some of this new technology, not people who hide their identity, and I think that's a good thing. But when you start attacking a business just because you don't agree with the owner's politics or stance, I think it's a dangerous place to be, which is where, if the reports are right, is where Keir Starmer is at on this. So I just want to remind everyone here that all this stuff, technology moves all the time, right? We have to be the place that is open, and especially my new party and their absolute belief in free speech, be the place that cherishes that. On business and trade, I'm going to compliment someone else who is in the room here, is Richard Tice, because I've seen Richard operate internationally as well. He walks in a room and people listen. And that's, by the way, half the battle. More important than all the other headlines you make is when they're listening, they know that you're true and you'll deliver. And that, if you ask any business, any other country that engages in negotiations on free trade with the UK, they think that actually up until now we've been totally slow and flat-footed in our negotiations. Why haven't we got a CETA deal with countries like the UAE? Because we've been slow. Because all we're saying is, well, we'll wait until we get the whole GCC. If that doesn't happen, we won't do this. Too flat-footed, too slow. We need to pump growth back in the economy, and I think what Richard will do will absolutely deliver on that.
You may well worry and ask, why are the Americans so concerned about what's happening on platforms here? The answer is very simple. Graham Linehan, a foreign national, who, for what he said when he was in Arizona, was arrested by armed police at Heathrow Airport. And the fear of the Trump administration, this could happen to any of their top businessmen. I can't think of a more negative thing for the British economy or the reputation of our country than that. Matthew Holhouse, The Economist.
Thank you. I want to ask about defence policy, if I may. Mr. Farage, you've been very clear that you wouldn't support the prospect of UK troop deployments to Ukraine. You've also been very consistent for years in arguing that NATO's enlargement to Eastern Europe has been provocative to Russia. I just wondered if you could take the opportunity really to clarify. Would a reform government maintain and uphold the UK's commitments to troops and aircraft on NATO's eastern flank, particularly Estonia and Poland, where there are big UK deployments under enhanced forward presence and air policing? Or, in your view, have these deployments constituted provocation of Russia?
Listen, you're talking about an historical argument. Remember, I'm the one person that stood up in 2014 in the European Parliament and said there will be a war in Ukraine. All right, I got it right. Nobody else saw it. Nobody else saw it. I think the European Union's eastward expansion, NATO's eastward expansion, gave Putin a casus belli. He could say to the Russian people, look, this is what they're doing. So I think tactically we've got that wrong. Am I committed to NATO? Yes. Do I think Donald Trump's been a good thing for NATO? Yes, I do. He's massively increased spending of NATO countries, having made the same pledges as every American president since Kennedy. The difference with Trump is when he says stuff, he actually means it. But overall, I don't think anybody would deny that under 14 years of Conservative government, our services were hollowed out. At the end of the 14 years, we were spending less on defence than we had been under Gordon Brown, and probably not having gripped some of the procurement difficulties in that area as well. So we are very strongly committed to defence as a party. I suspect, part of the benefit cuts in spending that we're going to have to make will be because we do need to spend more on the defence budget.
Sorry, no, on Estonia and Poland, though, there's specific NATO deployments that are in.
Well, they are NATO members now. It's done. So once you're a NATO member, you must be defended. All right? I mean, as I say, Henry Kissinger spoke about this. Kissinger was talking about NATO expansion after the fall of the Berlin Wall. These debates have been going on right back to sort of 1991, 1992. They're not, but frankly, whatever my historical position on this, it's not particularly relevant for where we are right now, and Putin does appear to be increasingly dangerous, is my take. Anna Gross, Financial Times.
Thank you. This is a question for Nigel. You say you would simply refuse to pay if an exit clause was added to the EU SPS deal, but that would inevitably collapse the entire trade and cooperation agreement. Are you happy to do that? And would a Farage government then mean dragging the British public through years of a damaging Brexit 2.0?
No, I mean, look, the tragedy of Brexit is we didn't do it. Didn't do it. And all right, we had the pandemic, and that's the argument that always gets made. We had the pandemic, therefore we didn't get time. For Keir Starmer to realign with single market rules is easy, because we never ever took the opportunity or the potential advantage of moving away from it. So I'm absolutely furious at both of them. But look, you're presupposing that Starmer would sign up to something as treacherous as this. I'm sure he won't do it. Thank you. Let's go on to Jay Merrick at the iPaper.
Can I ask who approached whom in this conversation? Did Nadeem ask you? And are you having more conversations with former members of Boris's cabinet to defect? And then secondly, on Iran, what do you think Keir Starmer should actually do? Would you like to see the RAF involved in any military action there? Thank you.
Well, I mean, I suspect Keir Starmer will do absolutely nothing. Nothing. I don't know what his view on the JCPOA deal was at the time, but given that it was favoured by the international community, he would have been in favour of it. So he probably wants to keep the mullahs running Tehran. I just don't know. Having conversations with all sorts of people, Jen, as I said earlier, there is a growing realisation that May the 7th is not only the most significant electoral date between now and the next general election, but it could well be a day that reshapes politics in a way that, frankly, on the centre-right has not been seen ever, frankly.
Nigel and I have known each other for a very long time, and I think it's when our very good mutual friend, Nick Candy, decided to support Nigel was the beginning of our conversations together. Nick has done a phenomenal job, by the way, in raising some of those millions for you, and I will see where I can help as well. But in December, I allowed my membership of the Conservative Party to lapse because I wanted to reflect. And over the Christmas period, I came to the conclusion that genuinely the country faces a national emergency. And if, as I've always done through my life, because what this country's given me, I wake up every morning, I have to pinch myself to think how lucky I've been. And you need luck, by the way. Any businessman who tells you otherwise is either lying to you or naive. How lucky I've been to have been allowed to be in this country and to become British. Then you'll come to the same conclusion that we need this government out. If you want this government out, there's only one choice. And my colleagues will have to reflect in my old party. And I think, as Nigel just said, the local elections are going to be a very big moment for reform and for the future of this country.
Yeah, we're getting there. Robert Hutton, the critic.
Hi there. Question
first of all, for Mr. Farage, last week you said you were very troubled by what was going on X. You seem to be moving to a position that child porn on demand is just something we're going to have to live with. Don't you think that your position on this would carry more weight if you and your MPs weren't taking money from the app that's offering the child porn on demand?
Nice try.
And a question for Mr. Zahawi. Do you see yourself going back into the House of Commons, or has Reform offered you the peerage that the Conservative Party didn't give you?
Because one is troubled by some of the things that happen in the online world, does not equate to thinking that the organisations themselves should be banned. There is a really quite big fundamental difference between those two positions. As for money, well, you know, as you may well know, we probably don't know, you wouldn't because of the way the declarations work, I employ people privately to help me with my social media accounts. Let me assure you, I don't make money on X. It costs me several £1,000s every month.
I will, I hope, be deployed whichever way the leader and the future Prime Minister of this country feels fit to deploy, and no promises have been made, no promises have been sought. But thank you for the question.
Yeah, you're pushing his case hard. David Burke from The Mirror.
Hi, thank you very much. There's quite a long history of you two having pops at each other, which has given us some few bits to get our teeth into. On another occasion in 2015, Mr. Zahawi, you likened Mr. Farage to Goebbels. The context of that was that...
Could have been worse then, couldn't it?
Was that at the time, Mr. Farage, you were proposing ripping up legislation to prevent discrimination on the grounds of ethnicity and nationality in the workplace. You said that it was ludicrous that employers can't differentiate between British and Polish workers at the time. Mr. Zahawi, you responded to that by saying it was a remark Goebbels would be proud of. You also described it as deeply racist. My question to you is, Reform now is proposing to do something similar in relation to welfare, in that qualification would be on the basis of nationality. Are you now, based on your previous position, comfortable with that? And how do you square that circle?
2015 was a general election campaign. All sorts of things get said and done in the heat of battle in general election campaigns, but I don't in any way row back from the comments I made then. I do think we should actually put British workers first. I genuinely do, and I think, you know, you're right. Quite, I mean, you know, good question in one sense, because you're right. That logic now applies to benefits. We should not be paying out wholesale benefits to vast numbers of people who come from overseas and who, when they get indefinite leave to remain, of course, are allowed to bring their extended families. And I think these are the arguments of common sense.
And I think, look, when my family came to these shores, we came here because we were determined to integrate. My parents were proud monarchists. They wanted their children to grow up with a real passion and commitment to this country. What has happened, in my view, in recent years, with, dare I say, the sort of the Treasury orthodoxy that all immigration is good for the economy, has completely distorted the cultural life of this country, the fabric of this nation, and the economy. You know, we should be focusing on GDP per capita, on people contributing. And now, when I travel around the world and see countries who do it well, who bring talent, if you're willing to bring your millions of pounds to this country, we're going to welcome you in Reform. Right? If you're willing to come here and build an AI business or a manufacturing business, whatever you're going to build, we're going to welcome you. If you're a net contributor, we're going to welcome you. But what has happened is that all was swept aside, and everything was about, let's just open the doors because the modeling says the bigger the influx, the bigger the GDP. Not true. And that is, for me, is where the evidence has led. And when you see the evidence, you change your mind.
We have seen the evidence. Two more questions. Ben Quinn from The Guardian.
Thank you. Mr. Zahawi, does this defection come with a personal donation from you to Reform? And you mentioned Shamima Begum in your remarks at the beginning. I think Mr. Farage surprised a lot of people last year, suggesting that she could be allowed to come back to the UK. Are you on the same page? And lastly, we're now at 34 people who've levelled accusations of anti-Semitism and racism. Can they all be dismissed as fantasists or political operators? 34 people, and that's to both of you, please. Thank you.
You know, even the quotes that have been read out today of things that Nadeem might have said about me in the 2015 general election campaign just shows you that actually these accusations of racism, isms of all kinds get thrown around every single day. In fact, they get thrown around so much that, frankly, they almost become meaningless, I'm afraid.
But on Shamima Begum, the moment someone decides that they'll pledge their allegiance and loyalty to a different state, the Islamic State, they forfeit the right, in my view, of being British. And I think I would certainly not want to be in a government that will welcome Shamima Begum back, and I'm sure, I hope my then Prime Minister would work very hard to make sure that that never happens. On the racism issue, I dealt with it at the beginning. I don't think I'd be sitting here, or Nigel would be sitting with me, if I thought or he thought there was an iota of racism. Although, in preparation for this morning, I thought I'd also look up, Nigel, everything that's been labelled racist in our country. Coffee has been labelled racist. Picnics have been labelled racist.
The Traitors programme, that's racist.
Electricity,
according to The Guardian,
has been labelled racist. And mathematics has been labelled racist.
Yeah.
This is a joke.
Yeah. As for the donation, we haven't got the donation
No
out
donation.
of him. No donation yet. But he will be locked in a room with Lee Anderson after this press conference, and who knows, we might make some progress. Final question. Daisy Eastlake from The Times.
Thank you. My first question about the defection. You said about how you're in conversation with more Tory MPs and former MPs about defection. Will you put a number on the further number of Tory defections set to come before May? And more generally, The Times reported this morning that the Home Affairs Select Committee is preparing to call for the Home Secretary to sack Craig Guildford, Chief Constable of West Midlands Police Force, over the decision to ban away fans from the Maccabi Tel Aviv match against Aston Villa last year. Farage, you've called for him to go in the past, but how long do you give Shabana Mahmood to sack him?
The answer to your first question is no. And I'm amazed this Guildford bloke's still there. I mean, frankly, what was revealed last week in that abject performance before the committee was something extraordinary, where, I mean, basically, you know, police chief hasn't just lied to everybody, but he's literally kowtowed to the most, I mean, you know, talk about racism, you know, literally kowtowed to just a form of violent extremism. Again, and frankly, you know, it's quite funny, isn't it? I mean, where are all the screaming protests outside the Iranian embassy? Where are all the, you know, the pro-Palestinian lot? It seems they only really turn out when they're having a go at Jews. I'm afraid, I'm sorry to say that. Guildford should have gone already, in my view.
Just on the point on the Maccabi Tel Aviv match, and this is really serious, and I hope Shabana is listening to this today. And I said that on the night, because I was actually doing media on the night. The message this sends is so dangerous and corrosive to our country. Why do I say that? Because the question is, who controls our streets? Right? If the police force in the West Midlands needed additional support, they should have called the Home Secretary and the Defence Secretary and got the army in. Right? No way should we allow Islamists, thugs, and terrorists to feel that they can have control of our streets. And if she doesn't act today, she's going to have a serious problem, in my view. Genuinely, I say this to you.
Thank you very much indeed, everybody.
press conference.
Really, it was. Of course, that's the Reform UK announcing that Nadeem Zahawi will be joining the party. Nadeem, I thought, made an incredible speech. He talked about nothing working, which is why he was standing. He said he could sit quietly chairing the Adam Smith Institute, but he also knows about living in a country with a waking nightmare of two-tier Britain. He said he stands there offering his help to build a party that Nigel Farage has created. He said, you know, Britain is broken. You know, Britain needs reform.
And he spoke about how he, as a wealthy man himself, a successful businessman, he founded the company YouGov, the very successful polling company. He said that he lives a much more gilded life to some extent than other people do in the country. But if he can see how broken the country is, think about how people outside the Westminster bubble